The coffee pot shattered against the floor at the exact moment Sarah Collins realized she was going to die tonight. Not tomorrow, not next week. Tonight. Her husband's truck was circling Murphy's diner for the third time, and she knew what that meant. She'd seen that pattern before, right before the hospital visits she'd learned to lie about. But in the corner booth sat a man in black leather whose eyes had been watching everything. And when their eyes met, Sarah made a choice that would change both their lives forever. Before we dive into this incredible true story, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Stay with us until the very end. This story takes turns you won't believe. And comment below with your city so we can see how far this message of hope and courage travels. Now let's begin. Sarah's hands wouldn't stop shaking. She'd dropped 3 plates in the last hour, and Murphy, her boss, had given her that look. The one that said, "One more mistake and you're done." But how could she explain that the trembling wasn't about the job? How could she tell him that every time the diner door opened, her heart stopped because it might be Rick? It was 9:47 p.m. on a Thursday. Sarah knew the exact time because she'd been watching the clock like it was counting down to her execution. "Table 6 needs a refill," Murphy barked from behind the counter. Table 6. The corner booth. The man who'd been sitting there for 2 hours nursing the same cup of coffee, saying nothing to anyone. Sarah grabbed the pot and walked over, trying to keep her breathing steady. The man looked up as she approached, and she got her first real look at him. Late 40s, maybe early 50s. Weathered face with a scar cutting through his left eyebrow. The hellsangels patch on his vest was impossible to miss, but it was his eyes that caught her calm, steady, like he'd seen every ugly thing the world had to offer and decided to keep going anyway. "More coffee?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sure," he said. His voice was rough, but not unkind. As she poured, her hands shook so badly that coffee slopped over the rim onto the saucer. "I'm sorry," she said, quickly reaching for a napkin. "I'm so sorry, It's fine," the man said. He didn't move to wipe it up. Instead, he looked at her face, really looked at it, and Sarah knew what he was seeing. The makeup she'd caked on that morning to cover the bruise on her left cheekbone. The way she flinched when the door opened. The fear she couldn't hide anymore. "You okay?" he asked quietly. 2 words. That's all it took for Sarah's carefully constructed wall to crack. "I'm fine." She lied, the words automatic after years of practice. The man nodded slowly, but his eyes said he knew better. He reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a card, plain white, with just a phone number written in pen. "My name's Tank," he said. "You ever need help, you call that number, day or night." Sarah stared at the card like it was a live grenade. Help. The word felt foreign, dangerous. Rick had spent 5 years teaching her that asking for help only made things worse, that she deserved what she got, that no one would believe her anyway. She started. That's when she saw it through the window. Rick's truck, black Ford F-150 with the dent in the passenger door from when he'd punched it during their last fight. It was rolling slowly past the diner, and Sarah could see his face in the driver's window scanning the interior. Her entire body went rigid. "Hey," Tank said, his voice sharper now. "What is it?" Sarah couldn't speak. She watched Rick's truck circle the parking lot once, twice, and then park in the shadows at the far end, facing the diner entrance. He was waiting. He was always waiting. "That truck," Tank said. It wasn't a question. Sarah's fingers closed around the card in her palm. She looked at Tank, and for the first time in years, she told the truth. "My husband," she whispered. "He's going to hurt me when I get off work. He always does when he drinks, and he's been drinking since noon." Tank's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his posture. He became very still, very focused. "How long?" he asked. 5 years. "Police." Sarah let out a sound that might have been a laugh if it wasn't so broken. "He works with them, fire department volunteer. They think he's a hero, and I'm just the crazy wife who doesn't appreciate him." Tank was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood up, and Sarah realized just how big he was. 6'3" at least, broad-shouldered, the kind of man who looked like he'd been built to take hits and keep standing. "What are you doing?" Sarah asked, panic rising in her throat. "Finishing my coffee," Tank said calmly. "And then I'm going to walk you to your car when your shift ends. That a problem?" "Yes," Sarah wanted to say. "Yes, because Rick will kill you, and then he'll kill me for letting you try." But the words wouldn't come, because underneath the fear was something else, something she'd almost forgotten existed. Hope. "My shift ends in 10 minutes, she heard herself say. Tank nodded and sat back down. He pulled out his phone and typed something quickly, then set it aside, waiting. The next 10 minutes felt like 10 hours. Sarah moved through the motions of her closing duties, wiping down tables, refilling salt shakers, counting out her tips, but her awareness stayed locked on two things: Tank in the corner booth and Rick's truck in the parking lot. At 10:00 p.m. exactly, Murphy locked the front door and told Sarah to go home. "You need me to walk you out?" Murphy asked. He was 65 and barely 5 feet tall, and Sarah loved him for asking, even though they both knew what Rick would do to him. "I'm okay," Sarah said. "I've got a friend." Murphy looked over at Tank, raised his eyebrows, but said nothing. He'd been running this diner for 40 years. He knew when to ask questions and when to stay quiet. Tank stood up and walked to the door with Sarah. Through the glass, she could see Rick's truck engine running now, exhaust visible in the cold October air. "Stay behind me," Tank said quietly. "Don't run, don't hurry. Just walk normal to your car. Where is it?" "The blue Honda, 3 spots from his truck." "Perfect." Tank pushed open the door and they stepped out into the parking lot. The temperature had dropped 20 degrees since sunset, and Sarah's breath came out in visible puffs. She shoved her hands in her jacket pockets to hide the shaking. They'd made it halfway to her car when Rick's door opened. "Sarah." His voice cracked across the parking lot like a whip. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Tank kept walking. Sarah stayed behind him, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst. Rick stumbled out of the truck, and even from 15 feet away, Sarah could smell the whiskey. His face was red, his eyes wild. This was bad. This was the worst she'd seen him. "I asked you a question," Rick shouted. He started toward them, his gait uneven but purposeful. "Who the hell is this? Who the hell is this guy?" "Keep walking," Tank murmured to Sarah. But Rick was faster than he looked when he was angry. He cut between them and the Honda, blocking their path. Up close, Sarah could see the rage on his face, the way his hands were clenched into fists. She knew those fists. She had scars from those fists. "You cheating on me?" Rick snarled at Sarah. "Huh, is that what this is? I work my ass off while you're here whoring around with—" "Move," Tank said. It was the first word he'd spoken since they left the diner, and his voice was flat, empty of emotion. Somehow that made it more frightening than if he'd been shouting. Rick looked at Tank for the first time, really looked at him. Sarah saw something flicker across her husband's face, not fear exactly, but calculation. Rick was a bully, but he wasn't stupid. He knew how to read threats. "This doesn't concern you, biker," Rick said, but his voice had lost some of its edge. "It does now," Tank said. "Sarah, get in your car." Sarah didn't move. She couldn't. 5 years of conditioning had taught her that defying Rick only made things worse. If she got in that car, Rick would follow her home. And when Tank left, Rick would make her pay for this. For all of it. "I can't," she whispered. "Sarah, get in the car now," Rick roared, taking a step toward her. Tank moved. It happened so fast that Sarah barely saw it. One moment Rick was lunging forward, the next, he was on the ground, Tank's boot pressing down on his chest, Tank's knee beside his head. Rick gasped for air, his face going purple. "Listen very carefully," Tank said, his voice still that same flat calm. "You're going to stay on this ground for exactly 60 seconds. Sarah's going to get in her car and drive away. You're not going to follow her. You're not going to call her. You're not going to go to her house. You understand me?" Rick tried to swing at Tank's leg. Tank pressed down harder and Rick made a choking sound. "I said, do you understand me? Get off me." "Wrong answer." Tank pressed down a fraction more, and Rick's face went from purple to almost black. His hands clawed at Tank's boot. "Okay," Rick gasped. "Okay, I understand." Tank held him there for another 3 seconds, long enough to make his point, then stepped back. Rick rolled onto his side, coughing and gasping. "Sarah," Tank said, not taking his eyes off Rick. "Car. Now." This time Sarah moved. Her legs felt like rubber, but she got to the Honda, fumbled with her keys, and got the door open. The engine started on the second try. Tank backed toward his motorcycle, a massive Harley parked near the diner entrance, keeping himself between Rick and Sarah's car the entire time. "You're dead," Rick shouted from the ground, finally getting enough air back to be stupid again. "You hear me? You're dead. I'll have you arrested for assault. Murphy's got 3 security cameras on this parking lot," Tank said calmly, swinging his leg over the Harley. "All of them saw you come at me first. Self-defense is a beautiful thing." He started the engine with a roar that made Sarah jump even inside her car. "Drive," Tank said loud enough for Sarah to hear through her closed window. "I'll follow you." Sarah put the car in reverse, her hands still shaking so badly she could barely grip the wheel. As she pulled out of the parking space, she saw Rick struggling to his feet, saw the murder in his eyes. And she saw Tank sitting on his bike, engine rumbling, watching everything with those steady, calm eyes. Sarah drove. She didn't know where she was going. Home was out of the question. Rick knew where she lived. Her mother was 3 states away and hadn't believed Sarah the last time she'd tried to tell her the truth about Rick. She had no friends left. Rick had systematically cut her off from everyone over the years. In her rearview mirror, the headlight of Tank's Harley followed at a safe distance. Sarah found herself on Highway 9 heading north out of town. The clock on her dashboard read 10:17 p.m. 19 minutes since her shift ended. 19 minutes since her life had changed. Her phone rang. Rick's name flashed on the screen. Sarah ignored it. It rang again and again. By the time she'd driven 5 miles, Rick had called 14 times. Then the text started. "You're making a mistake. Come home right now. I'm sorry, baby. I was drinking. I didn't mean it. If you don't come back, I swear to God, Sarah. That biker is a dead man. You're a dead woman." Sarah's vision blurred with tears. She pulled off at a rest stop, killed the engine, and just sat there shaking. The Harley pulled in beside her, and Tank got off, walked to her window. Sarah rolled it down. "You okay?" Tank asked. "No," Sarah said. It felt good to say it out loud. "No, I'm not okay. I don't know what to do. I can't go home. I can't go to a hotel because he'll find me. I can't." "There's a shelter 2 towns over," Tank said. "St. Catherine's. Woman who runs it is named Patricia. I'll call ahead, tell her you're coming." "How do you—" Sarah started, then stopped. Of course he knew about a women's shelter. Looking at him now, at the scars on his knuckles and the weariness in his eyes, Sarah realized Tank had probably helped people like her before. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "You don't even know me." Tank was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I was a medic. Marines, 2 tours in Afghanistan. You know what I learned? The people who need help the most are usually the ones who can't ask for it. And the people who hurt others the most are usually the ones everyone thinks are heroes." He pulled out his phone and made a call. The conversation was brief, one-sided. "Patricia's expecting you," Tank said when he hung up. "I'll follow you there, make sure you get in safe." "And then what?" Sarah asked. "He's going to come after you. You don't know Rick. He has friends, connections." "Let him come," Tank said simply. "I've dealt with worse than your husband." Sarah wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him so badly. But she'd lived with fear for so long that hope felt dangerous. "I need to ask you something," she said. "And I need the truth." Tank nodded. "Why do you care? Really, what's in this for you?" Tank looked at her for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than she'd heard it. "My mother," he said, "had a husband like yours. When I was 12, she finally got the courage to leave him. We moved 6 times in 2 years because he kept finding us. One night a trucker at a diner saw her crying, saw the bruises. He drove us all the way to California, helped us start over. Never asked for anything, Never wanted credit. Just did it because it was right. He paused. I asked him once why he helped us. You know what he said? He said, because I could. That's it. Because he could. Tank met Sarah's eyes. I can help you, Sarah, so I am. It's that simple. Sarah felt something break open inside her chest. 5 years of holding everything together, of telling herself she was fine, of believing she deserved what Rick did to her, all of it cracked and fell away. She started crying, deep sobs that shook her whole body. I'm sorry, she gasped. I'm sorry. I don't know why I'm... Don't apologize, Tank said. Cry as long as you need to. I'm not going anywhere. And he didn't. He stood beside her car in that rest stop for 20 minutes while Sarah cried out 5 years of pain and fear and shame. When she finally stopped, when she could breathe again, Tank handed her a napkin from his jacket pocket. Ready? He asked. Sarah nodded. She followed Tank's taillights through the darkness north on Highway 9, then east on Route 47. The roads got narrower, the trees thicker. At 11:15 p.m., they pulled into the parking lot of an old church that had been converted into a shelter. Lights glowed warm in the windows. A woman stood on the front steps, mid-60s gray hair pulled back in a bun, wearing a cardigan despite the cold. Patricia. Tank walked Sarah to the door. You'll be safe here, he said. Patricia runs a tight ship. Rick won't find you. How do you know? Sarah asked. Tank almost smiled. Because this place doesn't exist on paper. No address listed, no government funding, no paper trail. Just people helping people. Patricia came down the steps and put a gentle hand on Sarah's arm. Come inside, honey, she said. You're safe now. Sarah looked back at Tank. Will I see you again? I'll check on you tomorrow, Tank said. Make sure everything's okay. After that, we'll see. He turned to leave, then stopped. Sarah. You did the hardest part tonight. You asked for help. Everything else from here is just taking it one step at a time. Then he was gone, the Harley's engine fading into the night. Patricia led Sarah inside. The shelter was warm, clean, nothing like what Sarah had imagined. There were 6 other women there ranging in age from early 20s to late 50s. They looked at Sarah with understanding eyes, eyes that had seen their own versions of Rick. Patricia showed Sarah to a small room with a bed, a dresser, and a window that looked out over a garden. Bathrooms down the hall, Patricia said. There's a lock on your door, but you're the only one with a key. We'll talk more in the morning about options, resources, legal stuff. For tonight, just rest. Thank you, Sarah whispered. Patricia squeezed her hand. Thank Tank. He's saved more women than he'll ever admit. After Patricia left, Sarah sat on the bed and looked at her phone. 43 missed calls, 67 texts, all from Rick. The messages had progressed from apologies to threats to begging, and back to threats again. The latest one sent 3 minutes ago made Sarah's blood run cold. I know where you are. That biker made a big mistake. Tell him his brothers are going to hear about this. Tell him he's done. Sarah stared at the message. Rick was lying. He had to be. He couldn't possibly know where she was. But doubt crept in anyway. Rick always found her. Always. She was about to call Tank when her phone buzzed with a new message. But this one wasn't from Rick. It was from an unknown number. This is Tank. Got your number from Murphy. New phone, so Rick can't trace it. You're safe. Sleep. I'll be there at 9 a.m. Sarah read the message 3 times, then saved Tank's number. She turned off her phone, really off, not just silent, and plugged it in to charge. Then she locked her door, crawled into bed fully clothed, and waited for sleep that she was sure wouldn't come. But it did. For the first time in 5 years, Sarah Collins fell asleep without fear. Not because her problems were solved, they weren't. Not because Rick had suddenly become a different person, he hadn't. But because for the first time in a very long time, she wasn't alone. Outside in the darkness beyond the shelter's walls, Tank sat on his Harley in the shadows. He'd wait there until dawn, like he always did on nights like this. Just in case. His phone buzzed. Text from his club brother, Reaper. Heard you put hands on a civilian tonight. That true, Tank typed back. Civilian put hands on a woman. I corrected the situation. His name, Rick Collins. Yeah. Why? There was a long pause before the response came. He's connected. Fire department volunteer tight with cops. Already making calls. Says you assaulted him unprovoked. Says you tried to abduct his wife. Tank wasn't surprised. Men like Rick always had a story. Let him make his calls, Tank typed. I've got security footage. This could get messy, brother. Club doesn't need heat. Then the club stays out of it. This is personal. Another long pause. Your funeral. Watch your back. Tank pocketed his phone and looked up at the shelter. Sarah's window was dark. She was probably asleep. Good. She needed it. He thought about what Reaper had said. Rick was making calls. That meant things would escalate. Men like Rick didn't just walk away. They doubled down. They made it everyone else's fault. They burned down the world before they admitted they were wrong. Tank had seen it before. He'd lived through it before, and he knew how it ended. But knowing how it ended and stopping it from ending that way were two different things. His phone buzzed again. This time it was Murphy. Rick came back after you left. Drunk. Angry. Said some things about Sarah, about you. Threatened to burn my diner down if I didn't tell him where she went. I played dumb, but he's not stupid. Be careful. Tank smiled grimly. Rick was already making his moves. Good. Better to have the enemy coming at you from the front than sneaking up behind. He typed back to Murphy. Thanks for the heads up. Keep those security tapes safe. Already copied to 3 different places. You need them, you let me know. Will do. Tank settled back on his bike and watched the shelter. Dawn was still 6 hours away, but he'd wait. He'd always been good at waiting. The Marines had taught him patience. Afghanistan had taught him vigilance. And his mother, God rest her soul, had taught him that sometimes the most important battles weren't fought with guns or fists. Sometimes they were fought with simple presence. Just showing up. Just being there when no one else would. Around 3 a.m., a car pulled into the church parking lot. Tank's hand went to the knife on his belt, but he didn't move. The car, an old Toyota, parked near the entrance, and a woman got out. Young, maybe mid-20s, carrying a small duffel bag. She looked around nervously, then hurried to the door. Patricia answered before the woman even knocked. They spoke briefly. Then Patricia led her inside. Another one, Tank thought. Another Sarah. Another woman who'd finally found the courage to run. The shelter helped about 3 women a week, Patricia had told him once. 3 women every week, 52 weeks a year. That was over 150 women annually. And this was just one shelter in one town. Tank didn't want to think about how many Sarahs there were out there who never found a Patricia, never found a Murphy's Diner, never found help. His phone buzzed. It was 3:17 a.m. Who the hell was texting at 3:17 a.m.? Unknown number. Tank almost didn't open it. Could be spam. Could be Rick. Could be trouble. He opened it anyway. This is Sarah. Can't sleep. Just wanted to say thank you. Really, thank you. You saved my life tonight. Tank stared at the message for a long time. Then he typed back. You saved your own life. I just gave you a ride. Now go to sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. Why? Because you're going to file for a restraining order. And when Rick violates it, we're going to make sure he faces actual consequences for once. You think it'll work? Tank thought about lying, about giving her false hope. But Sarah deserved the truth. Honestly, I don't know. System's broken. Favors guys like Rick. But we're going to try anyway, because doing something is better than doing nothing. What if he hurts you? He won't. How do you know? Because I've been hurt before. By people a lot scarier than Rick Collins. I'm still here. There was a long pause. Then, were you really a medic? Yeah. Did you save a lot of people? Some. Did you lose any? Tank closed his eyes. Afghanistan rushed back the heat, the sand, the blood, the screaming. Corporal Martinez, 19 years old, bleeding out from an IED blast while Tank did everything he knew how to do, and it still wasn't enough. Private Chen taking a bullet meant for someone else. Lieutenant Morrison gone before the medevac even arrived. Yeah, he typed. I lost some. Does it get easier? The guilt tank almost laughed. Sarah had just escaped her abuser hours ago, and she was worried about his guilt. No, he typed honestly. But you learn to carry it better. Now go to sleep. That's an order. You're not my boss. I'm a Marine. Everyone's a recruit until proven otherwise. This time, Sarah sent a smiley face emoji, and Tank felt something strange in his chest. When was the last time he'd made someone smile? He pocketed his phone and went back to watching. The hours crawled by. At 5:30 a.m., Tank saw the first hints of dawn breaking over the trees. His back ached from sitting so long, his eyes burned from lack of sleep, but he'd stayed alert. Always alert. At 600 a.m., Patricia came out with a thermos of coffee. You're still here, she said. It wasn't a question. Promised I'd make sure she stayed safe. Patricia poured coffee into the thermos lid and handed it to him. You know you can't protect all of them, right? She said gently. There's too many. You'll burn yourself out. I know. But you try anyway. Yes, ma'am. Patricia smiled. Your mama raised you right, Marcus Williams. Tank looked up sharply. He never used his real name. Everyone knew him as Tank, had for years. How do you... I make it my business to know who's helping my girls, Patricia said. Former Marine medic, 2 tours honorable discharge. Hell's Angels, Riverside. Chapter for the last 8 years. Arrests for assault 3 times, all charges dropped because of self-defense. No convictions. Clean record otherwise. Tank didn't know whether to be impressed or concerned. You investigate everyone who helps out here. Only the ones who come back, Patricia said. And you, Marcus, you come back a lot. She was right. This was the 7th woman Tank had helped to St. Catherine's in the last 2 years. He didn't know why he kept doing it. It wasn't like it changed anything. Rick would be replaced by another Rick, and another Sarah would end up at Murphy's Diner, and the cycle would continue forever. But Patricia was right about something else too. He kept trying anyway. She's going to need more than a restraining order, Patricia said, watching the sunrise. Rick Collins isn't the type to respect paper. You know that. I know. So what's your plan? Don't have one yet. Figure it out as I go. Patricia chuckled. That's your problem, Marcus. You're so busy reacting that you never get ahead of the situation. Men like Rick. They plan, they scheme, they manipulate. If you want to beat him, you need to think 3 moves ahead. Tank sipped the coffee. It was good, strong. Patricia made coffee like she ran her shelter, no nonsense. Exactly what you needed. What do you suggest? He asked. Document everything. Every call, every text, every threat. Get witnesses. Murphy saw what happened, that's good. Security footage, even better. But you need more. You need people who can't be bought or bullied. You need evidence that even Rick's cop friends can't ignore. And where do I find that? Patricia smiled. Already working on it. I have friends too, Marcus. Friends who believe that women like Sarah deserve justice. Give me a day. I'll have something for you. She turned to go back inside, then stopped. One more thing. Sarah asked about you this morning. Wanted to know if you were real or if she'd dreamed you. What'd you tell her? I told her you were as real as the rest of us broken people trying to do some good before we die. That satisfy your ego. Tank almost smiled. Perfect. Patricia left and Tank finished his coffee. At 7 a.m. his phone buzzed. Reaper again. Need to talk. Club business. Can't avoid it anymore. Tank sighed. He'd known this was coming. The club had rules. Rules about bringing heat. Rules about getting involved in civilian problems. Rules about drawing attention. We're clubhouse. Noon. I'll be there. Tank looked back at the shelter. He'd promised Sarah he'd check on her at 9 a.m. That gave him 2 hours. Then the meeting at noon. Then... who knew? At 8:45 a.m. Tank walked into the shelter. Sarah was in the common room sitting with 2 other women drinking coffee. She looked up when he entered, and her face transformed. Relief, gratitude, hope, all of it visible in her eyes. "You came," she said. "Said I would." The other women excused themselves, giving Sarah and Tank privacy. They sat at the small table by the window. "How'd you sleep?" Tank asked. "Better than I have in years," Sarah admitted. "Is that weird? I mean, my whole life is falling apart. I'm hiding in a shelter, my husband wants to kill me, and you and I slept like a baby." "Not weird. You're safe here. Your brain knows it. First time in years it's been able to relax." Sarah nodded. Then her expression changed, became more serious. "Rick texted me last night. Said he knows where I am. Said you made a mistake helping me. He's bluffing. He doesn't know about this place." "How can you be sure?" "Because Patricia's good at keeping secrets, and because Rick would have already shown up if he really knew." Sarah wanted to believe him. Tank could see it, but 5 years of Rick had taught her not to trust in safety. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now you file for a restraining order. Patricia knows a lawyer. Good one does work pro bono for abuse cases. She'll walk you through it. And if Rick violates it, then he gets arrested. You really believe that the system will protect me?" Tank paused. Honesty was important. False hope was dangerous. "I believe we have to try," he said finally. "I believe that doing nothing guarantees he wins. Doing something at least gives you a chance." Sarah absorbed this. Then she asked the question Tank had been waiting for. "Why are you doing this? Really? And don't tell me it's just because you can." "There's more to it than that." Tank looked out the window. The morning sun was burning off the dew, turning the grass gold. "My mother," he said quietly. "Told you about her husband, but I didn't tell you the end of the story. We moved to California, started over. She got a job, I went to school. Life was good. For 3 years, life was good." He paused. "Then he found us. Don't know how, but he did. Showed up one night. Said if he couldn't have her, nobody could." Tank's hands clenched into fists on the table. "I was 15. I tried to stop him. He put me through a window. When I came to, my mother was dead. He'd shot her, and then himself. Murder-suicide. Cops called it a tragedy. Like it was fate. Like there was nothing anyone could have done." Sarah's hand covered his. Tank hadn't realized he was shaking. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm not telling you this for sympathy," Tank said. "I'm telling you because you need to understand something. Your husband, he's going to escalate. They always do. The restraining order, the leaving, the fact that you're not under his control anymore, it's going to make him worse before it makes him better. And you need to be ready for that." "I can't." Sarah started, fear creeping back into her voice. "Yes, you can," Tank said firmly. "Because you're not 15 and unarmed. You're not alone. And this time, the ending is going to be different." "How do you know?" "Because I'm not going to let him kill you. Simple as that." The conviction in his voice was absolute. Sarah felt it, believed it, and for the second time since meeting Tank, she let herself hope. "Okay," she said. "Okay. What do I do first?" But Sarah and Tank weren't the only ones making plans. At that exact moment across town, Rick Collins sat in his living room with 3 of his buddies from the fire department, and what they were planning would change everything. Rick Collins poured another shot of whiskey and slammed it back. His living room was thick with cigarette smoke and the kind of anger that made the air feel dangerous. 3 men sat with him, Bobby Martinez, Jake Sullivan, and Craig Wheeler. All volunteer firefighters. All loyal to Rick. All willing to do what needed to be done. "So let me get this straight," Bobby said, leaning forward in his chair. "Some biker puts you on the ground in front of half the town, and you're just gonna let him walk?" "I didn't say that," Rick growled. His throat still hurt from where Tank's boot had pressed down. Every time he swallowed, he remembered the humiliation, the fear, the way Sarah had looked at him, not with terror like she should have, but with something worse, defiance. "Then what are we doing here?" Jake asked. He was the youngest of the group, 26, always eager to prove himself. "You want us to pay this guy a visit?" Rick smiled, but there was nothing warm in it. "I want you to help me get my wife back." She's confused. That biker's got her thinking she can just leave me, that she has options. We need to remind her who she belongs to. Craig, the oldest at 42, shifted uncomfortably. Rick, man, maybe you should just let her cool off. Give her some space. She'll come back. She's not coming back, Rick snapped. Not unless we make her. That's how women like Sarah work. You give them an inch, they take a mile. I've been too soft on her. That ends now. Bobby nodded slowly. What about the biker? What about him? He's Hell's Angels, Rick. You can't just... I can do whatever I want, Rick interrupted. You know why? Because I have friends. Real friends. Not some motorcycle club full of criminals. I've got the fire department. I've got connections with half the cops in this county. That biker touched me, assaulted me. That's a crime. You went at him first, Craig pointed out quietly. Rick's head whipped toward him. Whose side are you on? Yours, man. Always yours. I'm just saying if this goes to court, people saw what happened. Murphy's got cameras. Murphy's cameras show exactly what I tell them to show, Rick said. Murphy knows better than to cross me. His diner's been having some code violations lately. Real shame if the fire marshal had to shut him down for safety concerns. The threat hung in the air. Craig looked away first. So, what's the plan? Jake asked, always the eager one. Rick pulled out his phone and showed them a photo. It was from Sarah's Facebook old account she barely used, but Rick had memorized every detail. The photo showed Sarah at some charity event, smiling next to Patricia Montgomery. This woman runs a shelter, Rick said. St. Catherine's. Off the books, no public address, but I did some digging. Called in a favor with Danny at the county assessor's office. Found the property records. Old church on Route 47 converted about 8 years ago. Bobby whistled. You think Sarah's there? I know she's there. Where else would she go? No family nearby, no friends. I made sure of that. And that biker, he's got a history. Helped 4 other women get to shelters in the last 2 years. Same pattern every time. Always ends up at St. Catherine's. How do you know all this? Craig asked. Rick tapped his phone. Because I'm not stupid. I've been tracking that biker since last night. Made some calls. Turns out Marcus Williams, that's his real name, has a thing for playing hero. Failed to save his own mother, so now he tries to save everyone else. The cruelty in Rick's voice made even Bobby uncomfortable. So we go to the shelter, Jake said. Bring Sarah home. Not we, me. This is between me and my wife. You 3 are going to deal with the biker. Deal with him how? Bobby asked. Rick's smile widened. Make it look like he's the bad guy. He's got a record 3 assault arrests even if the charges got dropped. One more incident and the cops won't look the other way. They'll lock him up. And with him out of the picture, Sarah will understand she has nowhere to run. What kind of incident? Jake asked, excitement creeping into his voice. Leave that to me, Rick said. I just need you 3 to be my witnesses. Can you do that? Bobby and Jake nodded immediately. Craig hesitated, then nodded too. What else could he do? They were brothers. You didn't abandon your brothers. Rick stood up, swaying slightly from the whiskey. Good. We move tonight, after dark. By tomorrow morning, Sarah will be back where she belongs, and that biker will be in a cell. Everything goes back to normal. But nothing was going back to normal. Not for Rick, not for Sarah, and not for Tank. Because while Rick was making his plans, other people were making theirs too. At the Hell's Angels clubhouse across town, Tank sat in the meeting room facing 8 of his brothers. The president, a man called Hammer, sat at the head of the table. He was 54, built like his name suggested, with gray streaking through his beard. So, Hammer said, his voice calm but firm, you want to explain what happened last night? Tank told them everything. The diner, Sarah, Rick, the confrontation. He left nothing out. When he finished, the room was silent. Reaper, who'd texted Tank earlier, spoke first. Brother, you know the rules. We don't get involved in domestic situations. Too messy. Too much heat. I know the rules, Tank said. Then why'd you break them? This came from Snake, the club's enforcer. He was 38, covered in tattoos with eyes that had seen too much violence to be shocked by anything. Because she asked for help, Tank said simply. And I could give it. You could have called the cops, Snake pointed out. Cops don't help women like Sarah. You know that. I know that. System's broken. Hammer leaned forward. That may be true, but it's not our job to fix the system. Our job is to protect this club. And what you did last night, you painted a target on us. On me, Tank corrected. Not the club. I made it clear this was personal. Doesn't matter, Reaper said. You wear our patch. When you go down, people see the patch first, your name second. Tank knew they were right. He'd known it last night when he'd stepped between Sarah and Rick. But he'd done it anyway, and he'd do it again. So what do you want me to do? Tank asked. Apologize. Tell Sarah I made a mistake. Throw her back to her husband. We want you to be smart, Hammer said. This Rick Collins, he's not some random civilian. He's got connections. Fire department, police, probably city council too. You're going to war with someone who has resources. Then I guess I'm going to war. Snake slammed his hand on the table. Damn it, Tank. This isn't about being noble. This is about survival. Your survival. The club's survival. I'm not asking the club to get involved, Tank said, keeping his voice level. I'm handling this myself. You can't, Reaper started. I can and I will. I've already got evidence. Security footage from Murphy's diner showing Rick coming at me first. Multiple witnesses. Self-defense is clean. Rick can make all the noise he wants, but facts are facts. Hammer studied Tank for a long moment. Then he sighed. You're not going to back down on this, are you? No, sir. Even if it costs you your patch. The room went dead silent. Taking a man's patch was serious. It meant exile from the only family most of them had. Tank met Hammer's eyes. Even then, Hammer nodded slowly. Then here's what's going to happen. The club stays neutral. We don't help you, but we don't hinder you either. You're on your own. If this goes south, we don't know you. Understand? I understand. But, Hammer continued, and something shifted in his voice. If you need backup, and I mean real backup, life or death backup, you call. Neutral doesn't mean we let our brothers die alone. Relief flooded through Tank. It wasn't support, but it wasn't exile either. It was the best he could hope for. Thank you, Tank said. Don't thank me yet, Hammer said. You're playing a dangerous game, brother. Men like Rick Collins don't fight fair. He's going to hit you where it hurts. Be ready. Tank stood to leave, but Snake stopped him. One more thing. Word on the street is Rick's got 3 of his fire department buddies helping him. Bobby Martinez, Jake Sullivan, Craig Wheeler. They're planning something, tonight probably. How do you know? Snake smiled grimly. Because Craig's girlfriend works at the bar I drink at. She was worried, called me, asked if I knew what her boyfriend was getting into. I told her to tell Craig to stay home, but he won't listen. They never do. Tank processed this information. 3 more guys backing Rick. That changed the math. What are they planning? Don't know specifics, but it's something at the shelter. Going after Sarah directly or maybe trying to set you up. Either way, it's going down tonight. Tank checked his watch. 12:47 p.m. If they were moving tonight, he had maybe 6 hours to prepare. Thanks for the heads up, Tank said. Don't mention it, Snake said. Literally, don't mention it. I was never here. This conversation never happened. Tank left the clubhouse and headed back to the shelter. On the way, he called Patricia. We've got a problem, he said when she answered. I know. Already heard. Rick's coming tonight. How did you... I told you I have friends, Patricia said. One of them is Craig Wheeler's mother. She called me an hour ago begging me to talk some sense into her son. I tried. He wouldn't listen. Tank cursed under his breath. We need to move Sarah. Get her somewhere else. Already working on it. I've got a safe house 2 states over. Friend of mine runs it. Sarah can leave this afternoon. Rick will follow. Let him try. Interstate flight to commit a felony that's federal. FBI gets involved. Rick's local connections won't help him there. It was a good plan. Smart. But something felt wrong about it. Something in Tank's gut was screaming that moving Sarah now would trigger exactly the response they were trying to avoid. What if we don't run? Tank said slowly, the idea forming as he spoke. What if we let Rick come? Patricia was silent for a moment. Explain. Rick's planning something for tonight. Probably going to try to take Sarah, make me look bad, or both. But if we know he's coming, we can control the situation. Get it on camera. Get witnesses. Make it so obvious that even his cop friends can't cover it up. That's risky, Patricia said. Everything about this is risky. At least this way we're not running. We're taking the fight to him. Patricia thought about it. Tank could almost hear her weighing options, calculating risks. What would you need? She asked finally. Cameras. Good ones. Multiple angles. And I need Sarah to agree to be bait. She'll never. Ask her. Let her decide. Patricia hung up. Tank drove the rest of the way to the shelter in silence, his mind racing through scenarios. Rick would come with his friends. 4 against 1. Bad odds. But Tank had faced worse. The key was making sure everything was documented. Making sure that when the dust settled, the truth was undeniable. When Tank arrived at the shelter, Sarah was waiting for him in the common room. Patricia must have already talked to her. Is it true? Sarah asked. Rick's coming tonight. Looks that way. Patricia said you have a plan, that you want me to stay here, to be bait. Tank nodded. But only if you agree. If you want to run, we can do that too. Patricia's got a safe house ready. Sarah stood and walked to the window. Outside, the day was bright and clear, beautiful, the kind of day that made violence seem impossible. I've been running for 5 years, Sarah said quietly. Every day running from his anger, from his fists, from his words. Even when I stayed in the same house, I was running into smaller and smaller spaces inside myself where he couldn't reach me. She turned to face Tank. I'm tired of running. This won't be easy, Tank warned. He's going to come here angry, dangerous. It could get ugly. It's already ugly, Sarah said. At least this way it ends. One way or another it ends tonight. Tank saw the steel in her eyes and recognized it. The same steel his mother had found too late. The same steel every survivor found when they decided they'd had enough. Okay, Tank said. Then here's what we do. He laid out the plan. Patricia would set up cameras throughout the shelter entrance, common areas, Sarah's room. They'd position witnesses in safe locations where they could see but not be seen. Tank would be there but out of sight initially. Let Rick make the first move. Let him show his true colors. And when he did, they'd have everything on record. What if he hurts you? Sarah asked. He won't. How can you be sure? Because I've been in situations a lot worse than Rick Collins, and I'm still standing. Sarah wanted to believe him. Tank could see it. But she'd lived with Rick's violence too long to believe anyone was invincible. If something happens to you because of me, she started. Nothing's going to happen to me, Tank said firmly. And even if it did, that's my choice. Not your fault. Never your fault. You understand? Sarah nodded, but Tank could see she didn't fully believe it. Victims of abuse always blamed themselves, always carried guilt that didn't belong to them. Patricia spent the afternoon setting up cameras. She called in favors, and by 4 p.m. the shelter had 6 high-definition cameras covering every entrance and common area. She also called Detective Amanda Chen, one of the few cops she trusted, and gave her a heads up. I can't officially do anything unless a crime is committed, Detective Chen said over the phone. Tank could hear her through the speaker. But I'll be in the area. If something goes down, I can respond quickly. Thank you, Amanda, Patricia said. Don't thank me yet. If this goes wrong, if someone gets hurt, there's going to be questions. Lots of questions. Understood. Detective Chen hung up. Patricia looked at Tank. Last chance to change your mind, she said. I'm not changing my mind. Stubborn. Committed, Tank corrected. As evening approached, the other women in the shelter were moved to a church across town. Patricia didn't want anyone else at risk. By 7 p.m., the shelter was empty, except for Sarah, Patricia, Tank, and 2 of Patricia's volunteers. Women who'd been through situations like Sarah's and wanted to help. At 7:30 p.m., as the sun was setting, Rick's truck pulled into the parking lot. But he wasn't alone. 3 more vehicles followed. Bobby's red Mustang, Jake's lifted pickup, Craig's SUV, 4 men against 1, just like Snake had warned. Tank watched from Sarah's room on the 2nd floor. Sarah stood beside him, her face pale but determined. You don't have to watch this, Tank said. Yes, I do. Down in the parking lot, Rick got out of his truck. Even from the second floor, Tank could see he'd been drinking. Rick walked up to the shelter's front door and pounded on it. "Sarah," he shouted, "I know you're in there. Get out here. Now." Patricia opened the door, standing in the entrance with her arms crossed. She was 65 years old and 5 feet tall, but she faced Rick without flinching. "Mr. Collins," she said calmly, "you need to leave." "Where's my wife?" "That's not your concern." "The hell it's not. She's my wife. I have rights." "You have the right to leave before I call the police," Patricia said. "Sarah doesn't want to see you." Rick tried to push past her, but Patricia didn't move. Behind Rick, his 3 friends got out of their vehicles, forming a wall of intimidation. "Last chance, old woman," Rick snarled. "Get out of my way." "No." Rick's hand shot out and grabbed Patricia's arm. That was the first mistake. Patricia didn't resist, didn't pull away. She just stood there, and the camera above the door captured everything in perfect clarity. "You're hurting me," Patricia said loudly, clearly. "Let go of my arm." Rick squeezed harder. "I'll let go when you bring me my wife." That's when Tank came down the stairs. He moved quietly, appearing in the hallway behind Patricia like a shadow materializing. Rick saw him, and his expression changed from anger to something darker. "You," Rick said. "You're trespassing. I'm going to have you arrested." "For what?" Tank asked calmly. "Standing in a shelter that invited me here. For kidnapping my wife." "Sarah's not kidnapped. She's here because she wants to be. Because you beat her. Because you terrorized her. Because you're a coward who hurts women." Rick let go of Patricia and took a step toward Tank. Bobby, Jake, and Craig moved closer, backing their friend. "You don't know anything about my marriage," Rick said. "I know enough. I know you put bruises on her face. I know she's terrified of you. I know you're the kind of man who needs 3 friends to feel brave." Jake laughed nervously. "Big talk from a biker." "Not that big," Tank said. "Just facts." Rick's face was purple now, rage and alcohol combining into something combustible. "Sarah, get down here. I'm taking you home." From the second floor, Sarah appeared at the top of the stairs. She descended slowly, each step deliberate. When she reached the bottom, she stood beside Tank. "I'm not going anywhere with you," Sarah said. Her voice shook, but she said it. Rick stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. "What did you say?" "I said no. I'm not going with you. I'm filing for divorce and a restraining order, and I'm telling everyone what you've done to me." Rick's control snapped. He lunged forward, reaching for Sarah, but Tank was faster. He moved between them, and Rick crashed into him instead. They both went down Tank deliberately, falling backward to make it look worse, to make sure the cameras caught Rick as the aggressor. "Get off him!" Bobby shouted, and suddenly all 4 men were converging. But Tank had fought in Afghanistan. He'd survived ambushes and firefights and close-quarters combat. 4 drunk civilians weren't a threat. They were a problem to be managed. Tank got to his feet as Jake swung at him. Tank dodged, let Jake's momentum carry him past, then put him on the ground with a simple leg sweep. Craig came next, more cautious. Tank didn't hit him, just blocked his punches and moved, always moving, keeping all 4 men in view. "Stop," Patricia shouted. "I've called the police. They're on their way." That should have ended it. 4 men attacking one in a women's shelter, caught on camera, police coming. They should have run. But Rick was beyond logic now. He pulled something from his jacket, a knife, small but sharp. "I'm gonna kill you," Rick slurred, pointing the blade at Tank. "And then I'm taking my wife home." Everything slowed down. Tank saw the knife, saw Rick's finger positioning on the handle wrong. Amateur, dangerous to himself as much as anyone. Saw Bobby and Craig backing away, realizing this had gone too far. Saw Jake drunk and stupid, still ready to fight. And Tank saw Sarah standing frozen on the stairs, watching her husband threaten to kill someone in front of her. "Don't do this, Rick," Tank said quietly. "You pull a weapon on me, it's not assault anymore. It's attempted murder. Even your cop friends can't cover that up." "I don't care," Rick shouted. "I don't care. She's mine. You hear me? Mine." He lunged with the knife. Tank sidestepped and caught Rick's wrist, twisting until Rick cried out and dropped the blade. Then Tank put him on the ground, face first, arm locked behind his back. "It's over," Tank said. It's done. But Rick was crying now, great heaving sobs. Sarah, please. Baby, please. I love you. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. Please come back. Please. Sarah walked down the last few stairs. She stood over her husband, this man who'd controlled every aspect of her life for 5 years, and she felt nothing. No love, no hate, no fear. Just emptiness. I'm not yours, she said. I never was. And I never will be again. That's when the police arrived. 2 cars' lights flashing, sirens wailing. Detective Amanda Chen got out of the first car, took one look at the scene. Rick on the ground, knife on the floor, 4 men who clearly didn't belong there, and understood immediately. Everyone stay where you are, Detective Chen ordered. Mr. Collins, you're under arrest for assault, trespassing, and menacing with a weapon. He attacked us, Rick shouted, pointing at Tank. That biker attacked all of us, Bobby. Jake, Craig, tell her. Bobby and Craig looked at each other. Craig's mother's words echoed in his head. Jake opened his mouth to back Rick up, then closed it. Is that true? Detective Chen asked the 3 men. Craig broke first. No. Rick went after them. We were just supposed to be here for support. But Rick, he pulled a knife. We didn't know he had a knife. Shut up, Rick screamed. Shut up, you traitor. Detective Chen handcuffed Rick and put him in her patrol car. Then she took statements from everyone. Patricia showed her the security footage, all of it from every angle. The assault on Patricia, the knife, Rick's admission that Sarah was his. When Detective Chen finished watching, she looked at Rick's 3 friends. You're all accessories. I should arrest you too. Please, Craig said, and he looked like he might cry. Please, we didn't know it would go this far. We were just trying to help our friend. Your friend is an abuser, Detective Chen said coldly. And you enabled him. Get out of here, all of you. And if I find out any of you go near Sarah Collins again, I will arrest you. Understand? They understood. They fled to their vehicles and drove away, leaving Rick alone in the back of the patrol car. Detective Chen turned to Sarah. You okay? Sarah nodded. I'm okay. I'm going to need a full statement, tonight if possible. I can do that. Good. And Sarah, Detective Chen's voice softened. I'm sorry. Sorry we didn't help you before. Sorry you had to go through this to get help. Sarah didn't know what to say to that. Sorry didn't undo 5 years of terror. But it was something. As the police cars drove away with Rick, Sarah felt her legs give out. Tank caught her before she hit the ground. I've got you, he said. You're safe now. And for the first time in 5 years, Sarah believed it. But the night wasn't over yet. Because at 11 p.m., while Sarah was giving her statement at the police station, Rick made bail. Someone, probably one of his cop friends, had pulled strings. Rick walked out of the station, and the first thing he did was make a phone call. Yeah, he said into the phone, his voice cold and sober now. It's me. I need a favor, a big one. That biker who's been protecting my wife, I want him gone, permanently. Can you make that happen? The voice on the other end said something Rick smiled at. Good. Do it tomorrow. Make it look like an accident. And when he's out of the way, Sarah will understand she has nowhere left to run. Rick hung up and climbed into a friend's car. He didn't go home. He went to a motel on the edge of town and sat there in the darkness, planning his next move. Because men like Rick didn't accept defeat. They escalated. They adapted. And they always found a way to hurt the people who tried to escape them. Tomorrow would be a new day, and Rick Collins had every intention of making it Sarah's last day of freedom. Tank's phone rang at 6:47 a.m. He'd been awake for hours, sitting in his apartment cleaning his service pistol, a habit from his Marine days that he'd never broken. When he saw Detective Chen's name on the screen, he knew it was bad news. He made bail, she said without preamble. Tank's hand tightened on the phone. How? Judge Morrison, one of Rick's drinking buddies from the Elks Lodge, set bail at $5,000. Rick's father posted it at midnight. You've got him on camera assaulting Patricia, threatening me with a weapon. There's no way. I know what I've got. Detective Chen interrupted, frustration bleeding through her professional tone. But Morrison claimed Rick was defending his marital rights, said the footage showed Rick trying to retrieve his wife from unlawful confinement. That's insane. That's the system. I'm sorry, Tank. I really am. I fought this. The DA fought this. But Morrison has final say on bail, and he said it. Tank stood and walked to his window. The sun was rising over the industrial district where he lived, painting everything orange and red. Pretty, deceptive, like everything else about this situation. Where is he now? Tank asked. We don't know. He's required to stay away from Sarah, from the shelter, from you, but Rick Collins doesn't strike me as someone who follows rules. No, he's not. Watch your back, Detective Chen said. I've seen men like Rick before. When they lose control, they don't just give up. They burn everything down. Tank thanked her and hung up. He immediately called Patricia. She answered on the first ring. I already know. Amanda called me 20 minutes ago. Sarah's still asleep. I haven't told her yet. How'd she do last night? After the statement, she was shaking for 2 hours. Couldn't stop. Then she just shut down. Went to her room, closed the door. I checked on her at 4 a.m. She was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. Tank recognized that response. Shock. The body's way of protecting itself when reality became too much to process. I'm coming over, Tank said. Tank, if Rick's out there somewhere, then I need to be there, between him and Sarah. That's not negotiable. Patricia sighed but didn't argue. She knew Tank well enough by now to understand that once he made a decision, nothing would change his mind. Tank grabbed his jacket and helmet, but before he could leave, his phone rang again. This time it was Snake. We've got a problem, Snake said. I'm aware. Rick made bail. It's worse than that. My contact in the police department just called. Rick filed a counter-complaint last night from his cell. Says you assaulted him unprovoked at Murphy's Diner. Says you've been stalking his wife. Says you're running some kind of kidnapping operation. Tank felt cold wash through him. None of that's true. Murphy's got footage. Murphy's Diner got broken into last night. 3 a.m. Someone smashed the security system. Took the hard drives. The cold turned to ice. Rick was smarter than Tank had given him credit for. Eliminate the evidence. Create a counter-narrative. Make Tank the bad guy. There are backups, Tank said. Murphy told me he copied everything. Better hope so, because right now it's Rick's word against yours. And Rick's got a lot more credibility than a Hells Angels biker with 3 prior assault arrests. Those charges were dropped. Doesn't matter. Optics matter. Story matters. And Rick's telling a story that people want to believe. The concerned husband trying to save his wife from a violent criminal. Tank wanted to punch something. Instead, he forced himself to breathe, to think. What's the play? He asked. Lawyer up, today. Don't talk to cops without representation. And Tank, be careful. Rick's connected. He can make your life very difficult. After Snake hung up, Tank sat on his couch and forced himself to think strategically. Rick had made his move. Destroyed evidence, filed false charges, positioned himself as the victim. It was smart. Ruthless. Exactly what someone would do if they'd planned this scenario in advance. Which meant Rick had been planning this for a while. Maybe since the first night at Murphy's. Maybe longer. Tank's phone buzzed with a text from a number he didn't recognize. You should have stayed out of this, biker. Now you're going to pay. And when I'm done with you, I'm coming for Sarah. She's going to learn what happens to wives who betray their husbands. Tank stared at the message. It wasn't signed, but he knew who it was from. Rick was escalating, threatening, testing boundaries. Tank didn't respond. Instead, he forwarded the message to Detective Chen, then headed to the shelter. When he arrived at 8:15 a.m., Patricia met him at the door. Her face was drawn, worried. Sarah's awake, she said quietly. I told her about the bail. She's not taking it well. Tank found Sarah in the common room, sitting at the same table where they'd talked yesterday. She looked up when he entered, and Tank saw something in her eyes that scared him more than Rick's threats. Resignation. He's never going to stop, Sarah said. Her voice was flat, emotionless. He'll keep coming. Keep finding ways to hurt me. Hurt you. Hurt anyone who tries to help me. Sarah, I should just go back, End this before someone gets killed. Tank sat across from her. That's what he wants you to think, that you're powerless, that resistance is futile, but it's not true. Isn't it? He made bail. He destroyed the evidence. He's filing charges against you. He's winning, Tank. He's always winning. No, he's desperate. Desperate people make mistakes, and Rick's about to make a big one. Sarah looked at him with hollow eyes. What if the mistake is you dying because you tried to help me? Tank reached across the table and took her hand. She tried to pull away, but he held on gently. Listen to me. I've been in combat. Real combat. Life and death bullets flying, people dying around me. You know what I learned. The person who survives isn't always the strongest or the fastest. It's the person who refuses to quit, who keeps fighting even when it looks hopeless. But what if fighting just makes it worse? It can't get worse than going back to him. You know what happens if you go back. He'll kill you eventually. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but one day his anger will go too far and you'll be dead. Is that really better than fighting? Sarah's eyes filled with tears. I'm just so tired. Tired of being afraid. Tired of running. Tired of dragging other people into my nightmare. Then let's end the nightmare, Tank said. Not by surrendering, by winning. Really winning. Putting Rick away for so long he can't hurt you anymore. How he's got lawyers, friends, connections. And we've got the truth. Murphy's backup footage. Patricia's security cameras. Witnesses. Your testimony. Rick thinks he's destroyed the evidence, but he hasn't. He's just making himself look more guilty. Patricia brought over 2 cups of coffee and sat down with them. Tank's right, she said. I've been doing this for 23 years. Helped over 300 women leave abusive situations. Some went back, some kept running. But the ones who survived, who really survived, they were the ones who stood and fought, who said no more and meant it. Sarah wiped her eyes. I want to believe you. Both of you. But I've tried fighting before. Rick always wins. That's because you were fighting alone, Tank said. This time, you're not. Before Sarah could respond, Tank's phone rang. It was Murphy. Tank, we've got a situation. Rick just showed up at the diner with 2 sheriff's deputies. They've got a warrant for your arrest. Tank felt his stomach drop. On what charges? Assault, kidnapping, criminal threatening. Rick's claiming you attacked him at the diner, then kidnapped his wife and are holding her against her will. That's all lies. I know that. You know that. But the warrant's real, and Tank, one of the deputies, is Rick's cousin. This is a setup. Tank looked at Sarah and Patricia. They'd both heard Murphy's side of the conversation through the phone's speaker. What should I do? Tank asked. Turn yourself in, but not to these deputies. Call Detective Chen, surrender to her directly. Get ahead of this before Rick can spin it. It was good advice. Tank knew it. But every instinct in his body screamed against letting himself be arrested. Once he was in custody, Sarah would be vulnerable. Rick would make his move. I need to think, Tank said. Don't think too long. If you run, it makes you look guilty. Murphy hung up. Tank stood and paced the common room. Sarah watched him with growing fear. You're going to run, she said. Because of me. I'm not running. I'm strategizing. It's the same thing. Tank, you have to turn yourself in. If you don't, they'll hunt you down. They'll use it against you. Tank knew she was right. But he also knew that the moment he surrendered, Rick would have free access to Sarah. The restraining order wouldn't stop him. Nothing would stop him except Tank being there, being a physical barrier between Sarah and her husband. I'll turn myself in, Tank said finally. But not yet. First we get you somewhere safe, really safe. Out-of-state new identity if necessary. I can't. Yes, you can. Patricia, you said you have contacts. People who can make someone disappear. Patricia nodded slowly. The underground. Network of shelters and safe houses across the country. They can move. Sarah, give her a new start. But it takes time. At least 48 hours to arrange everything. Then we buy 48 hours, Tank said. His phone rang again. Detective Chen this time. I just heard, she said. Tank, you need to come in. I can protect you better if you're in custody. Out there, Rick's deputies can do whatever they want. How long can you hold me? 72 hours before arraignment. But Tank, if you run... I'm not running. I'm making sure Sarah's safe first. Give me 48 hours. I can't do that. There's a warrant. I have to... Amanda. Tank used her first name deliberately. How many domestic violence cases have you worked? She was quiet for a moment. Too many. How many times have you seen the system fail? Seen women go back to their abusers because there was no other option? Seen restraining orders that weren't worth the paper they were printed on? More times than I can count. Then give me 48 hours. Let me get Sarah somewhere Rick can't find her. After that, I'll surrender to you personally. You have my word. Detective Chen sighed heavily. If anyone asks, I'm telling them I couldn't locate you. But Tank, this is my career on the line. Don't make me regret this. You won't. After she hung up, Tank turned to Patricia. Make the calls. Get Sarah into the underground. I'll buy you time. How? Patricia asked. By giving Rick what he wants. A target. Me. Sarah stood up so fast her chair fell over. No, absolutely not. I'm not letting you sacrifice yourself for me. It's not a sacrifice, it's strategy. Rick wants me gone, fine, let him chase me. While he's focused on me, Patricia gets you to safety. By the time Rick realizes what happened, you'll be 3 states away with a new name and a fresh start. And you'll be in jail, or worse. Tank smiled grimly. I've been in worse places than jail. I'll survive. What if Rick doesn't want you arrested? Sarah's voice cracked. What if he wants you dead? The question hung in the air. It was the fear they'd all been dancing around, but no one had voiced directly. Then I guess we'll find out how good Rick is in a real fight, Tank said. Patricia made phone calls while Tank prepared to leave. Sarah followed him to the door, grabbing his arm. Please, she said. Please don't do this. There has to be another way. There isn't. Not one that keeps you safe. And keeping you safe is all that matters. Why? Sarah demanded. Why do you care so much? You barely know me. Tank looked at her, really looked at her. This woman who'd been broken down for 5 years, but was still standing, still fighting, still alive despite everything Rick had done to destroy her. Because someone cared enough to save my mother once, Tank said quietly. Even though it didn't work, even though she died anyway, that person tried. Gave us 3 good years before it all fell apart. And I promised myself that if I ever had the chance to be that person for someone else, I would take it, no matter the cost. Sarah started crying. Tank pulled her into a hug. You're going to be okay, he said. I promise. You're going to get out of this town, start over. Build a life where no one hits you, where no one controls you, where you can just be. And what about you? I'm a Marine. We improvise, adapt, overcome. I'll figure it out. Tank pulled away and walked to his Harley. As he started the engine, his phone buzzed. Another text from Rick's number. I know where you are. I'm coming. And this time, I'm not bringing cops. Tank showed the message to Patricia through the window. She nodded grimly and locked the door behind him. Then Tank did something that would either save Sarah's life or end his own. He texted Rick back. Good. I'm tired of running. Let's finish this. Murphy's Diner parking lot. 1 hour. Just you and me. He sent the message and waited. 3 minutes later, Rick responded. You're going to regret this. Tank smiled coldly. We'll see. He drove toward Murphy's Diner, but he didn't go directly there. Instead, he stopped at 3 different locations, making calls, setting things in motion. By the time he pulled into Murphy's parking lot at 10:30 a.m., he had backup plans for his backup plans. Murphy came out of the diner looking worried. What are you doing? He asked. The deputies are looking for you everywhere. I know, that's the point. Rick wants a confrontation. I'm giving him one, but on my terms. This is crazy. Probably. But it's the only way to end this. Murphy, I need you to do something for me. If this goes bad, if Rick or his people hurt me, I need you to make sure Sarah gets to safety. Can you do that?" Murphy looked at Tank for a long moment, then he nodded. "I'll make sure. But Tank, don't die. Sarah needs you alive more than she needs you martyred." "I'll do my best." Tank waited. The parking lot was empty, except for Murphy's truck and one customer's sedan. The morning traffic had died down. Perfect. Whatever was about to happen, there would be minimal collateral damage. At 10:47 a.m., Rick's truck pulled in. But he wasn't alone. 5 vehicles followed him. His 3 friends from last night, Bobby, Jake, and Craig. Plus 2 more trucks Tank didn't recognize. 8 men total. Tank did the math quickly. Bad odds. Very bad odds. Rick got out first. He was sober now, clear-eyed and focused. More dangerous than when he was drunk. "You showed up," Rick said. "I'm surprised. Thought you'd run like the coward you are." "I don't run from bullies," Tank said. Rick laughed. "Bully? Is that what you think I am? I'm a man trying to save his marriage. You're a criminal trying to destroy it. I'm the criminal. You pulled a knife. You assaulted Patricia. You made bail and immediately started stalking Sarah again." "Prove it," Rick smiled. "Oh, wait, you can't. Because I'm smart. Smarter than you. Smarter than Sarah. I always have been." The other 7 men got out of their vehicles. They formed a semicircle around Tank. Not an attack formation yet, but close. "What's this?" Tank asked. "Thought you wanted to finish things, just you and me." "Change of plans. See, I realized something last night. Beating you up doesn't solve my problem. You'll just keep coming back. Keep putting ideas in Sarah's head. So I need to send a message. A permanent message." Tank's hand moved toward his pocket, where he kept his knife. But before he could reach it, someone grabbed his arms from behind. Tank spun, breaking the grip, and saw it was Jake Young. Stupid Jake, who'd learned nothing from last night. Then everyone moved at once. Bobby came from the left. Craig from the right. Tank blocked Bobby's punch and kicked Craig's knee, sending him down. But there were too many of them. Too many angles. Someone hit Tank in the ribs. Someone else grabbed his jacket. Tank fought like he'd been trained efficiently, brutally. He broke Jake's nose with an elbow. Put another man on the ground with a throat strike. But numbers mattered. 8 against 1 always mattered. Rick stayed back, watching, smiling. That's when Murphy came out of the diner with a baseball bat. "Stop!" Murphy shouted. "I've called the police. They're on their way." Rick laughed. "The police, Murphy, the police are on my side. Who do you think is going to believe you? A biker and an old man? Or me and my witnesses who'll swear that Tank attacked us first?" But Murphy wasn't alone. Behind him came 5 more people, regulars from the diner, the construction workers who ate breakfast there every morning, the single mom who waitressed evening shifts with Sarah, the retired teacher who graded papers in the corner booth. "We saw what happened," the construction foreman said. "All of us. You and your boys attacked Tank, not the other way around." Rick's smile faltered. "You don't want to get involved in this." "Too late," the waitress said. "We're already involved. Sarah's our friend, and we're not going to let you hurt anyone else." Tank used the distraction to break free from the men holding him. He backed toward Murphy's group, blood running from a cut above his eye. Rick's face went purple. "You're all making a mistake. A big mistake. I'll destroy you. Every single one of you. That's when the police arrived. But not the deputies Rick expected. It was Detective Chen, along with 2 state troopers. "Rick Collins," Detective Chen said, getting out of her car with her hand on her weapon. "You're under arrest for violating your bail conditions assault and conspiracy to commit assault." "That's absurd. He attacked us." Rick pointed at Tank. "Really?" Detective Chen pulled out her phone and showed Rick the screen. "Because I've been watching this whole thing on Murphy's new security system, the one he installed last night after you broke into his diner. Funny thing about cloud storage, Rick. Can't steal what isn't physically there." Rick's face went from purple to white. You can't. Can and did. I've got footage of you threatening Tank, coordinating this attack, admitting you planned it. That's premeditated assault. That's a felony." The state troopers moved in, handcuffing Rick and his friends. Bobby and Craig went quietly, looking sick. Jake tried to run and got tackled within 5 steps. The other 4 men Rick had brought claimed they didn't know what was happening and just wanted to go home. Detective Chen let them go with a warning. Rick fought the handcuffs, screaming, "This isn't over, you hear me, Tank? This isn't over. I'll get out. I'll find Sarah. You'll shut up and get in the car," Detective Chen said coldly. "Unless you want to add threatening a witness to your charges." As the police cars drove away with Rick and his friends, Tank sat down hard on the parking lot pavement. The adrenaline was wearing off and pain was flooding in. His ribs screamed. His face throbbed. Blood dripped from the cut above his eye. Murphy knelt beside him. "You okay?" "Been worse." Detective Chen walked over. "That was incredibly stupid." "I know." "You could have been killed." "I know. But it worked. We've got Rick dead to rights now. Multiple felonies caught on camera, premeditated. Even his lawyer friends can't get him out of this." Tank looked up at her. "How long can you hold him?" "With these charges, long enough for Sarah to disappear. Patricia already called me. Sarah's leaving tonight. Underground Railroad is taking her. By tomorrow morning, she'll be in a different state with a new name." Tank closed his eyes in relief. "Good, that's good." "You need a hospital," Detective Chen said. "I need to make sure Sarah gets out first." "Tank." "After," Tank said firmly. "Hospital after." Detective Chen sighed but didn't argue. She helped Tank to his feet and Murphy drove him back to the shelter. Sarah was waiting by the door. When she saw Tank's face, bloody, swollen, bruised, she gasped. "Oh God, what did he do to you?" "Nothing I couldn't handle. Rick's in custody. Real custody this time. Multiple felonies. He's not getting out." Sarah started crying again, but this time it was different. Relief. Release. 5 years of held breath finally exhaling. "You did it," she whispered. "You really did it." "We did it," Tank corrected. "You were brave enough to ask for help. Everything else followed from that." Patricia came out with a first aid kit and started cleaning Tank's wounds. As she worked, she explained the plan. Sarah would leave at midnight with 2 volunteers from the underground. They'd drive her to a safe house in Montana, then on to Washington State. New identity, new job waiting, new life. "You'll never be able to come back here," Patricia said to Sarah. "Not as long as Rick's alive. You understand that?" Sarah nodded. "I understand, and I'm okay with it. This place, it was never home anyway. Home was a prison. Anywhere else is freedom." Tank sat with Sarah for the next few hours. They didn't talk much, didn't need to. Sometimes presence was enough. At 11:30 p.m., a van pulled up. 2 women got out, former abuse survivors who now helped others escape. They loaded Sarah's meager belongings into the van. Sarah turned to Tank one last time. "How do I thank you?" she asked. "How do I possibly thank you for saving my life?" Tank pulled the angel keychain from his pocket, the one his mother had given him before she died. "Take this," he said. "Reminder that angels come in all forms, even broken ones." Sarah closed her hand around the keychain. "You're not broken. You're the most whole person I've ever met." Then she got in the van and it drove away into the darkness. Tank stood in the parking lot and watched until the taillights disappeared. Patricia came and stood beside him. "You did good," she said. "We'll see. Rick's not convicted yet. He's got lawyers, friends. He's also got evidence stacked against him. He's going away, Tank, for a long time." Tank wanted to believe her, but he'd lived long enough to know that justice wasn't guaranteed. That sometimes the bad guys won. That sometimes doing the right thing wasn't enough. But Sarah was safe. For now, that had to be enough. Tank's phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "Thank you. For everything. I'll never forget what you did for me. I hope you find your peace. S." Tank typed back. "You earned your freedom. Now go live it." He pocketed his phone and walked to his Harley. His whole body hurt, but it was a good hurt. The kind that came from fighting for something that mattered. As he rode home through the empty streets, Tank thought about his mother, about the trucker who tried to save them, about all the Sarah Collins out there who were still trapped, still suffering, still waiting for someone to believe them. He couldn't save them all. but he'd saved this one. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was all anyone could do. Save one person at a time and hope it made a difference. Tank pulled into his apartment complex at 1:47 a.m. He was exhausted, battered, and alone. But he was also alive. And somewhere out there, so was Sarah. Free. Finally free. That had to count for something. It had to. Tank woke up at 6 a.m. to his phone ringing. Every muscle in his body screamed in protest as he reached for it. The caller ID showed Detective Chen. "Rick posted bail again," she said before Tank could even say hello. Tank sat up too fast and immediately regretted it. His ribs felt like they were made of broken glass. "How is that possible? You had him on multiple felonies." Judge Morrison, same judge as before, claims the security footage is inadmissible because Murphy didn't have proper permits for the cameras. Says Rick's entitled to bail pending trial. That's corrupt. Yeah. Welcome to small-town justice. Morrison and Rick's father go back 40 years. They're not going to let Rick go down without a fight. Tank pressed his palm against his forehead. When did he get out? 20 minutes ago. Tank, I'm telling you this because Rick made a call from the jail phone yesterday. We couldn't trace who he called, but the conversation lasted 17 minutes. That's not a lawyer call. That's a planning call. You think he hired someone? I think Rick Collins is a man with nothing left to lose. His wife is gone, his reputation is damaged. He's facing prison time. Men like that get desperate. And desperate men do terrible things. After Detective Chen hung up, Tank tried calling Patricia. No answer. He tried again. Still nothing. Ice formed in his stomach. He threw on clothes and headed for the shelter, every movement sending pain radiating through his torso. The 40-minute drive felt like 4 hours. When Tank pulled into the church parking lot, Patricia's car was there, but something felt wrong. The front door was slightly ajar. Tank approached carefully. His hand went to the knife on his belt. "Patricia," he called out. No response. Tank pushed the door open slowly. The common room looked normal, coffee pot still on, magazines scattered on the table, but the silence was oppressive wrong. "Patricia." A muffled sound came from the back office. Tank moved quickly, ignoring his screaming ribs. He found Patricia tied to her office chair, duct tape over her mouth, eyes wide with fear and fury. Tank pulled the tape off as gently as he could. "He was here," Patricia gasped. "Rick, he had a gun. Said if I didn't tell him where Sarah went, he'd burn this place down with me in it." Tank's hands shook as he untied her. "Did you tell him?" "No, but Tank, he knew. He already knew she was going to Montana. Someone told him. Someone from the underground." "That's impossible. The underground is compromised," Patricia said, rubbing her wrists where the rope had cut into them. "Rick's father has money. Lots of it. Enough to buy information from people who should know better." Tank felt his world tilting. Sarah had a 12-hour head start, but if Rick knew where she was going, he could get there first. Could be waiting for her. "We need to warn her," Tank said, pulling out his phone. "Can't. Part of the underground protocol. Once they're on the move, they go dark. No phones, no contact. It's the only way to keep them safe. Safe from tracking, not safe from someone who already knows the destination." Patricia's face crumpled. "Oh God, what have I done? I promised her she'd be safe." Tank was already moving toward the door. How long ago did Rick leave? Maybe 20 minutes. He was driving that black truck of his. Montana's a big state. Where exactly was she going? Patricia pulled up a map on her computer with trembling hands. Safe house outside Missoula. Small town called Lolo. The contact there is a woman named Maria Torres. Former survivor, been running the house for 6 years. Tank calculated distances in his head. It was a 14-hour drive to Missoula from here. Sarah had left at midnight, so she'd been on the road for 6 hours. Rick left 20 minutes ago. If he drove straight through pushed speed limits, he might catch up to her in 10 hours. "I'm going after them," Tank said. "Tank, you can barely stand. Look at yourself." Tank looked down at his reflection in Patricia's computer screen. His face was a mess of bruises and cuts. His left eye was swollen nearly shut. But none of that mattered. Sarah trusted us, Tank said quietly. She put her life in our hands. I'm not going to let Rick take that from her. Not after everything she's been through. Patricia stood up steadier now. Then you're not going alone. I'm coming with you. Patricia. Don't argue. I know the underground protocols. I know the contacts. I know the safe words and procedures. You need me. She was right. Tank hated that she was right, but she was. We leave in 5 minutes, Tank said. Pack light. We're not stopping except for gas. While Patricia gathered supplies, Tank called Detective Chen. Rick assaulted Patricia and threatened to kill her, Tank said. That's a parole violation at minimum. You can arrest him. I need Patricia to file a formal complaint. She will, but right now we have a bigger problem. Rick knows where Sarah is. He's driving to Montana right now to find her. Detective Chen was quiet for a moment. Tank, I can't help you across state lines. My jurisdiction ends at the county border. I know, but you can call ahead. Warn the Montana authorities. Give them Rick's description, his vehicle information. I can do that, but Tank, be careful. If you confront Rick in Montana and something happens, Montana law applies. You won't have me there to help you. Understood. Tank and Patricia were on the road by 7:15 a.m. Patricia drove while Tank made phone calls. First to Maria Torres in Montana, warning her that Rick was coming. Then to Snake, asking him to spread the word through the biker network that Rick Collins was hunting a woman and needed to be stopped. That's a big ask, Snake said, putting out an APB on a civilian. This civilian tried to kill me yesterday, assaulted an elderly woman this morning, and is currently chasing a domestic violence victim across state lines with a gun. That big enough? Snake was quiet, then said, I'll make the calls. But Tank, the club's already taking heat for your involvement in this. Hammer's getting pressure from other chapters to cut you loose. Then maybe it's time I went solo. Don't be stupid. You leave the club, you lose the only protection you have. I lost my mother because no one protected her. I'm not losing Sarah the same way. Club or no club. Tank hung up before Snake could respond. Beside him, Patricia stared straight ahead at the highway. You'd really leave the Angels? She asked. After 8 years, I'd leave anything if it meant saving Sarah's life. Why? And don't give me the line about your mother. There's more to it than that. Tank watched the mile markers flash by. Patricia was right. There was more to it. When I came back from Afghanistan, Tank said slowly, I was broken. PTSD, survivor's guilt, nightmares every night. I'd saved dozens of people in combat, but I couldn't save myself. Started drinking, started fights, didn't care if I lived or died. He paused. The Angels found me in a bar parking lot after I'd picked a fight with 4 guys. They didn't join in. Didn't help me. Just watched. When it was over and I was on the ground bleeding, Hammer walked over and said, You fight like a man who wants to die. I told him I did. And he said, then die doing something that matters. Patricia glanced at him. What did he mean? He meant stop wasting my life destroying myself and start using it to help people. The Angels aren't Boy Scouts, but we have a code. We protect our own. We stand up for people who can't stand up for themselves. And we don't let innocent people get hurt if we can prevent it. So Sarah became your mission? No. Sarah became my reminder that some things are worth fighting for. Worth dying for, if it comes to that. They drove in silence for a while. The highway stretched endlessly ahead, mountains rising in the distance. Tank's phone rang every 30 minutes with updates. Snake reported that bikers across 3 states were watching for Rick's truck. Maria Torres confirmed she'd locked down the safe house and was ready to move Sarah if necessary. Detective Chen called to say Montana State Police had been notified. At 2 p.m. they stopped for gas in Wyoming. Tank was stretching his legs when his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You can't save her. I'm going to find her, and when I do, I'm going to make sure she understands what happens to wives who leave their husbands. And then I'm coming for you. Rick Tank showed the message to Patricia. He's taunting you, she said, trying to get in your head. It's working. Don't let it. Rick's a coward. Always has been. That's why he beats women instead of fighting men. That's why he needs weapons and friends to back him up. He's scared right now, and scared people make mistakes. Tank wanted to believe her, but the message had done its job. Rick was out there somewhere getting closer to Sarah with every mile. They got back on the road. Tank tried to rest, but sleep wouldn't come. His mind kept replaying worst-case scenarios. Rick finding the safe house. Sarah's face when she realized he'd tracked her down. The sound of a gunshot. At 5 p.m., Tank's phone rang. Maria Torres, and she sounded terrified. "He's here," Maria whispered. "Rick Collins. He's parked across the street from my house. Just sitting there, watching." Tank's blood turned to ice. "Where's Sarah?" "Inside. She doesn't know yet. I didn't want to scare her." "How long has he been there?" 10 minutes. What do I do?" Tank looked at the GPS. They were still 4 hours away. "Lock all the doors," Tank said. "Close all the curtains. Call the local police and tell them there's a man threatening your home. Don't mention Sarah's name. Just say you run a women's shelter and someone's surveilling it." Okay, I can do that." Maria listened to me. "Rick's dangerous, but he's also a coward. He won't do anything in broad daylight with witnesses around. Keep Sarah inside until we get there." "What if he breaks in?" "Then you defend yourselves. You have weapons. Baseball bat, pepper spray. That'll have to do." "But Maria, if it comes down to him or you do whatever you have to do." "Understand?" "I understand." Maria hung up. Patricia pressed down harder on the accelerator. 4 hours, she said. "We can make it in 3.5 if I push it." "Then push it." They flew through Wyoming into Montana, barely staying under speeds that would get them pulled over. Tank called Detective Chen and updated her. She promised to contact Montana authorities again, emphasized the urgency. At 6:30 p.m., as the sun was setting over the Montana mountains, Tank's phone rang again. Maria crying now. "He knocked on the door," she sobbed. "Said he just wants to talk to his wife, that he loves her and wants her to come home." Sarah heard his voice. "She's having a panic attack. I can't calm her down." "Did you call the police?" "They came. Talked to Rick. He showed them his marriage license, said he was just trying to reconcile with his wife. The cops told him to leave, but they can't arrest him for standing on a public street." Tank wanted to scream. The system was failing Sarah again, even 1,000 miles from home. "We're 90 minutes away," Tank said. "Can you hold out that long?" "I don't know. Rick's getting agitated. He's pacing back and forth, making phone calls. Tank, I think he's going to do something." "Keep Sarah away from windows. If Rick tries to enter the house, you call 911 immediately. Don't hesitate." "Okay, please hurry." The next hour was the longest of Tank's life. Patricia pushed the truck to 85 miles per hour on the empty Montana highways. Tank sat rigid in his seat, watching his phone, waiting for it to ring with news he didn't want to hear. At 7:45 p.m., they entered Missoula. The GPS showed 20 minutes to Lolo. Tank tried calling Maria. No answer. He tried again. Nothing. "Something's wrong," Tank said. Patricia didn't respond, just drove faster. They reached Lolo at 8:07 p.m. The safe house was a small ranch-style home at the end of a gravel road. Rick's truck was still parked across the street, but the cab was empty. Tank's heart stopped. He was out of the vehicle before Patricia fully stopped running toward the house despite his screaming ribs. The front door was open. Not kicked in, not broken, just open. "Maria!" Tank shouted. "Sarah!" A crash came from inside the house, then a scream. Sarah's scream. Tank burst through the door and found chaos. The living room was destroyed. Furniture overturned, lamps, broken curtains torn down. Maria was on the floor, bleeding from a cut on her forehead, trying to get up. And in the kitchen, visible through the doorway, Rick had Sarah pinned against the counter, one hand around her throat, the other holding a gun to her head. "Let her go," Tank said, his voice deadly calm. Rick turned and Tank saw madness in his eyes. This wasn't the angry drunk from Murphy's Diner or the calculating manipulator from the parking lot fight. This was a man who'd completely snapped. "You," Rick spat. "This is all your fault. Everything. My marriage, my reputation, my life, you destroyed it all. You destroyed it yourself. Years before I showed up. I just stopped you from destroying Sarah too." "She's mine," Rick screamed, pressing the gun harder against Sarah's temple. Sarah whimpered, tears streaming down her face. She's my wife. She promised to love, honor, and obey. She belongs to me. She's a human being. She doesn't belong to anyone. You don't understand. You don't understand what it's like to love someone so much it hurts, to need them, to know they're the only thing keeping you together. Tank took a careful step forward. That's not love, Rick. That's obsession. And it's killing you both. Then we'll die together. Rick cocked the gun. If I can't have her, nobody can. Tank saw Sarah's eyes close, saw her body go limp with resignation. She'd given up. After everything they'd done, all the fighting and running and hoping she'd given up. But Tank hadn't. You want someone to shoot, Tank said. Shoot me. Let Sarah go and shoot me instead. Rick's eyes narrowed. Why would I do that? Because I'm the one who ruined your life, right? I'm the one who took Sarah away. I'm the one who got you arrested. You want revenge? Take it on me. Patricia appeared in the doorway behind Tank, her phone out recording everything. Rick didn't notice her. You think you're a hero? Rick asked. You think saving one woman makes up for all the people you couldn't save? Your mother, your friends in Afghanistan, all those dead bodies you couldn't put back together. Tank felt the words hit home, but he didn't let it show. You're right. I couldn't save them. But I can save Sarah. Let her go, and you can do whatever you want to me. Rick studied Tank, weighing options. The gun wavered slightly. You'd really die for her, Rick asked. For a woman you barely know, without hesitation. Something in Tank's absolute certainty seemed to break through Rick's madness. The gun lowered an inch, then another inch. I loved her, Rick said, and suddenly he sounded tired, defeated. I really did love her. I know you think you did, but love doesn't hurt, love doesn't control, love doesn't threaten or hit or terrorize. Then what does it do? Rick asked, and he sounded genuinely confused, like the concept of healthy love was completely foreign to him. It sets people free, Tank said, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Rick looked at Sarah, really looked at her, saw the fear in her eyes, the bruises on her arms, the way she trembled at his touch. I made you afraid of me, Rick said softly. Sarah nodded, unable to speak. I didn't mean to. I didn't know how else to keep you. You can't keep people, Tank said. You can only love them and hope they stay. For a moment, Tank thought it might work, thought Rick might lower the gun completely, let Sarah go, surrender peacefully. But then Rick's face hardened again. No, he said. No, this is wrong. She's mine. She married me. She promised. The gun came back up to Sarah's head. Tank moved without thinking, pure instinct from his combat training. He closed the distance in 2 steps, his hand shooting out to grab the gun. Rick pulled the trigger. The shot was deafening in the small kitchen. Tank felt the bullet pass so close to his head that he felt the heat. Then his hand was on the gun, twisting it away from Sarah, forcing it toward the ceiling. Rick fought like a rabid animal, all thrashing limbs and desperate strength. They crashed into the counter, then the refrigerator. Tank's ribs screamed, but he didn't let go. Couldn't let go. Let go! Rick shrieked. Let go of my gun. Not happening. They wrestled across the kitchen floor. Tank used his body weight to pin Rick down, still fighting for control of the weapon. Rick's finger was on the trigger, trying to fire again. Sarah scrambled away, crawling toward Maria. Patricia ran to them, pulling them both out of the house to safety. Tank and Rick rolled across broken dishes and spilled food. Tank managed to slam Rick's hand against the floor once, twice, 3 times. The gun finally skittered away, sliding under the stove. But Rick wasn't done. He grabbed a kitchen knife from the floor and slashed at Tank. The blade caught Tank's forearm, opening a deep cut. Blood poured out hot and fast. Tank grabbed Rick's wrist with his other hand, stopping the knife inches from his throat. It's over, Tank gasped. Rick, it's over. Let it be over. No. Rick was crying now, tears and snot mixing with sweat. No, it's not over. It'll never be over. He pushed harder with the knife. Tank's strength was fading. Blood loss, exhaustion, and his injured ribs were all catching up to him. The knife moved closer to his throat. Tank heard sirens in the distance, heard Patricia shouting for help, heard Sarah crying, and he heard his mother's voice as clear as if she were standing next to him. "Don't give up, baby. Never give up." Tank pulled his head back away from the knife, then jerked it forward, slamming his forehead into Rick's nose. Bone crunched. Rick's grip on the knife loosened. Tank twisted it away and threw it across the room. Then he pinned Rick completely, using every last bit of his strength. "It's over," Tank repeated. "You lost. Accept it." Rick struggled for another few seconds, then went limp. He stared up at Tank with empty eyes. "I loved her," he whispered. "I really did." "No," Tank said. "You loved owning her. There's a difference." Police flooded into the house seconds later. Montana State Police, followed by local cops. They pulled Tank off Rick and handcuffed them both. "Wait," Tank tried to say, but his vision was going gray. The blood loss from his arm was worse than he'd thought. Is Sarah okay?" Someone was pressing something against his arm. Someone else was asking him questions he couldn't quite hear. "Tank," Sarah's voice cut through the fog. "Tank, stay awake." She was kneeling beside him, her hands on his face. Alive, unhurt, safe. "You're okay," Tank managed to say. "I'm okay because of you. Again. Always because of you." Tank tried to respond, but the gray was turning to black. He heard someone calling for an ambulance, heard Rick being dragged away, still shouting about his rights and his wife. The last thing Tank saw before he passed out was Sarah's face, and she was smiling through her tears. He woke up in a hospital bed 16 hours later. Patricia was sitting in a chair beside him reading a book. "Welcome back," she said. Tank's arm was bandaged. His ribs were wrapped. An IV fed fluids into his other arm. "Sarah," he asked. "Safe." The police took her statement. She's staying with Maria until they figure out next steps. Rick. Jail. No bail this time. Montana judge wasn't impressed with his story. He's being charged with attempted murder assault with a deadly weapon, domestic violence, stalking across state lines, and about 6 other felonies. He's not getting out. Tank closed his eyes in relief. "You almost died," Patricia said quietly. "You lost 2 pints of blood. Doctor said if the ambulance had been 5 minutes later, you wouldn't have made it. But I did make it. Barely. Tank, you can't keep doing this, throwing yourself in front of bullets, fighting monsters. You're going to get yourself killed. Maybe, but not today." Patricia smiled despite herself. "No, not today." A knock on the door interrupted them. Detective Chen walked in, followed by a man in a Montana State Police uniform. "Mr. Williams," the trooper said. "I'm Captain Rodriguez. I need to ask you some questions about last night." Tank braced himself. Here came the consequences. The charges. The legal nightmare. But Captain Rodriguez surprised him. "I reviewed the security footage from the house," he said, "and I spoke with Sarah Collins, Patricia Montgomery, and Maria Torres. All 3 confirmed that you acted in defense of Ms. Collins's life. The shooting was legally justified." Tank stared at him. "I'm not being charged." "No, sir. You're being recommended for a civilian commendation for bravery. You saved a woman's life at great risk to your own. That's heroism in my book." After the captain left, Detective Chen sat on the edge of Tank's bed. "You did it," she said. "You actually did it. Saved Sarah, stopped Rick, got him behind bars for real this time." "We did it," Tank corrected. "Everyone, together." "Maybe. But you were the one willing to die for a stranger. That's rare, especially these days." Tank thought about that. Was Sarah still a stranger after everything they'd been through? "Can I see her?" Tank asked. "Sarah?" Patricia smiled. "She's been waiting outside for hours. Wouldn't leave until you woke up." They let Sarah in. She looked better already. Still scared, still fragile, but there was light in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "Hi," she said. "Hi." Sarah sat in the chair Patricia had vacated. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "Thank you," Sarah finally said. "Those words aren't enough. They'll never be enough. But thank you." "You're welcome." "The police said Rick's going to prison for a long time, 20 years minimum." "Good. And that I can stay in Montana if I want. Start over here. Maria offered me a job helping at the safe house, helping other women like me. You should take it. You'd be good at it." Sarah nodded. "I think I will. But Tank, what about you? What happens to you now?" Tank looked out the hospital window at the Montana mountains. What did happen to him now? Go back to his apartment, back to the club that was probably done with him, back to waiting for the next Sarah to show up at Murphy's Diner. "I don't know," he admitted. "I haven't thought that far ahead." "Well, when you figure it out," Sarah said, pulling something from her pocket, "you should keep this. Reminder that you're not just a Hell's Angel, you're a real one." She placed the angel keychain in his palm, the same one he'd given her. "You're supposed to keep that," Tank said. "No, you're supposed to remember what you did, what you're capable of. You saved my life, Tank. Don't forget that when the dark thoughts come. Don't forget that you're the reason I'm still breathing." Sarah leaned down and kissed his forehead. Then she stood and walked to the door. "Sarah," Tank called. She turned. "You saved your own life by asking for help that first night. I just drove the getaway car." Sarah smiled, a real smile, genuine and warm. "Then I guess we saved each other," she said. And then she was gone, and Tank was alone with his thoughts and his pain and his exhaustion. But for the first time in years, since before Afghanistan, since before his mother died, since before everything went dark, Tank felt something he thought he'd lost forever. He felt like maybe he'd done enough. Maybe saving one person really did matter. Maybe he mattered. Tank spent 3 days in the Montana hospital before they cleared him to travel. The doctors wanted him to stay longer, but Tank had never been good at sitting still. On the morning of the 4th day, he signed himself out against medical advice and walked into the parking lot where Patricia was waiting with her truck. "You're an idiot," she said as he climbed in. "So I've been told." They drove in silence for the first hour. Tank watched Montana disappear in the rearview mirror and felt something strange in his chest. Relief mixed with regret. Sarah was safe, but he was leaving her behind. Maybe for good. "She asked about you this morning," Patricia said. "Sarah. Who else? She wanted to know if you were really leaving or if you'd stay in Montana." "What did you tell her?" "I told her that men like you don't stay anywhere long, that you're always moving, always running toward the next fight." Tank looked at Patricia. "You think that's true? I think you've been running since your mother died, running from guilt, from pain, from the possibility of actually being happy. And I think until you stop running, you'll never find peace." Tank didn't have an answer for that, mostly because Patricia was right. His phone rang as they crossed into Wyoming. It was Hammer. "You alive?" Hammer asked. "More or less." "Good. We need to talk. Club business. How soon can you get back?" 2 days, maybe." "Make it 1. This can't wait." Hammer hung up before Tank could ask questions. Patricia glanced at him. "Trouble?" "Probably. Hammer doesn't do urgent unless it's bad." They pushed through Wyoming and made it back home by the next afternoon. Tank went straight to the clubhouse, not even stopping at his apartment. The parking lot was full more bikes than usual. Something big was happening. Inside, the entire chapter was assembled. 32 members, all wearing their patches, all looking serious. Hammer sat at the head table with the club's officers. Snake stood against the wall, arms crossed, face unreadable. "Sit," Hammer said, pointing to a chair in the center of the room. Tank sat. This felt like a trial. He'd been through club trials before, seen men lose their patches, seen men get beaten out of the club. But he'd never been the one in the chair. "You know why you're here?" Hammer asked. "No, sir." "Then let me explain. 3 weeks ago, you got involved in a domestic situation. Against club rules. You brought heat on us. Against club rules. You left state without permission. Against club rules. You nearly got yourself killed fighting someone else's battle. Also against club rules." Tank said nothing. What could he say? It was all true. "Now," Hammer continued, Normally, breaking that many rules would mean you lose your patch. Maybe worse. We don't tolerate brothers who put themselves above the club. I understand. I'm not finished. See, while you were in Montana playing hero, something interesting happened. We got calls, lots of calls, from women's shelters across 3 states, from domestic violence organizations, from survivors groups, all saying the same thing, that a Hell's Angel named Tank saved a woman's life, that he proved bikers aren't just criminals and thugs, that he showed the world we can be something better. Tank looked up confused. Snake spoke from his position against the wall. You made us look good, brother. For the first time in years, people are talking about the angels as protectors instead of predators. That matters. And Reaper, one of the club's senior members, stood up. We took a vote last night. 31 members voted. Want to know the results. Tank's heart was pounding. Sure. 29 voted to keep you in the club. 2 voted to kick you out. Those 2 being me and Hammer. Tank stared at Hammer, who smiled grimly. See, I don't like making exceptions, Hammer said. Rules are rules. But the club is a democracy, and the club has spoken, so you keep your patch, on one condition. Name it. You make this official. This thing you did with Sarah, you make it a club program. We start helping women escape abuse. Legal, organized, coordinated with proper authorities. We become the good guys for real, not just when it suits us. Tank couldn't believe what he was hearing. You want the Hell's Angels to run a domestic violence intervention program. I want us to be more than weekend warriors who drink beer and ride bikes, Hammer said. I want us to matter, to stand for something. And if that starts with protecting women like Sarah Collins, then that's where it starts. The room erupted in shouts of agreement. Fists pounded on tables. Brothers cheered. So what do you say? Hammer asked. You in? Tank stood up. I'm in, but I need resources. Training for members on domestic violence. Legal support. Connections with shelters and police. You'll have it, Hammer said. Patricia Montgomery already called. Said she'd help set everything up. She's been working on this longer than any of us. Tank felt something shift inside him. This was bigger than Sarah. Bigger than Rick. This was a chance to actually make a difference, to save not just one woman, but dozens, hundreds maybe. When do we start? Tank asked. We already did. Reaper, tell him. Reaper pulled out his phone and showed Tank a website. Hell's Angels Domestic Violence Prevention Network, launched this morning. Already got 6 calls from women asking for help. Tank stared at the screen. The website had photos of club members' contact information, resources for victims. It looked professional, real. Patricia helped design it, Reaper said. Said you inspired her. Said if one biker could save one woman, imagine what 32 could do. Tank felt tears burning behind his eyes but didn't let them fall. Not here. Not in front of his brothers. Thank you, he said to the room, all of you, for believing in this, for believing in me. Don't thank us yet, Snake said. This is going to be hard work, dangerous work. Men like Rick Collins aren't going to just roll over. They're going to fight back, come after us, try to discredit us. Let them try, Hammer said. We've been called worse than domestic violence helpers. We'll survive. The meeting broke up into smaller conversations. Brothers came up to Tank, shaking his hand, slapping his back. Some shared their own stories, mothers who'd been abused sisters' daughters. Pain they'd carried for years but never spoken about. Tank realized that Sarah's story wasn't unique. It was universal. And that's what made it so important. After the meeting, Tank drove to Murphy's diner. It was 6 p.m. dinner rush and the place was packed. Murphy saw Tank walk in and immediately poured a cup of coffee. Heard you got yourself shot at in Montana, Murphy said, sliding the cup across the counter. Knife, not shot. Mostly. Mostly. Jesus, Tank. You're going to give me a heart attack with your heroics. Tank sipped the coffee. It was terrible like always, and somehow that was comforting. Murphy, I need to ask you something. The security footage from the night Rick attacked me here. You really backed it up? 3 different places. Cloud storage, external hard drive, and I gave a copy to my lawyer with instructions to release it if anything happened to me. Why'd you do all that? Murphy looked at Tank for a long moment. Because Sarah used to work every Tuesday and Thursday night. And every Tuesday and Thursday, she'd come in with new bruises, new excuses, new lies that we all pretended to believe because it was easier than confronting the truth. He paused. I should have helped her years ago. Should have called the police. Should have done something. But I didn't. I let it happen under my own roof because I was scared of Rick, scared of causing trouble, scared of getting involved. So when you finally did, what I should have done, the least I could do was make sure the evidence survived. Make sure you didn't go down for being brave when I was a coward. Tank set down his coffee. You're not a coward. You let me use your diner for the confrontation. You got witnesses to back me up. You kept the footage safe. That's brave. It's the bare minimum. Sometimes the bare minimum is all we can manage. And sometimes that's enough. Murphy nodded, then pulled an envelope from under the counter. This came for you yesterday, from Montana. Tank opened it. Inside was a letter in Sarah's handwriting. Dear Tank, I'm writing this on my first day of work at Maria's safe house. I'm helping a woman who just arrived last night. She's where I was 3 weeks ago, terrified, broken, convinced she'll never be free. I showed her my bruises, told her my story, and said, if I can escape, so can you. You gave me more than freedom. You gave me purpose. A reason to turn my pain into something useful. I'm going to spend the rest of my life helping women like me, and I'm going to tell every single one of them about the biker who believed me when no one else would. I heard about what the Angels are doing, the domestic violence network. Tank, that's incredible. You're going to save so many lives. I also heard you almost died. Again, you need to stop doing that. The world needs you alive. I don't know if we'll ever see each other again. Part of me hopes we do. Part of me thinks maybe we're not supposed to. Maybe you were just meant to be my angel for one moment, and then we both had to move on. But I want you to know something. Every morning when I wake up without fear, I think of you. Every time I look in the mirror and see my bruises fading, I think of you. Every time I help another woman escape, I think of you. You changed my life. And I'm going to spend the rest of it making sure your sacrifice meant something. Thank you doesn't cover it. So I'll just say this. You're a good man, Marcus Williams. Don't ever forget that. With gratitude and love, Sarah Tank read the letter 3 times. Then he carefully folded it and put it in his jacket pocket right over his heart. She okay? Murphy asked. Yeah, she's okay. Better than okay. Tank finished his coffee and left cash on the counter. As he walked out, Murphy called after him. Tank, what you did, that took guts. Real guts. Just wanted you to know that. Tank nodded and walked to his Harley. The sun was setting, painting everything orange and gold. He sat on his bike for a minute, just breathing, just being. His phone buzzed. Text from Patricia. First official case through the new program. Woman in Phoenix needs extraction. Abusive husband, 2 kids, no resources. Can you coordinate? Tank looked at the message. He was tired. His body still ached. His arm where Rick had cut him throbbed constantly. He wanted to go home, take some pain pills, sleep for 12 hours. But there was a woman in Phoenix who needed help. A woman like Sarah. Like his mother. Like all the women who'd been hurt and broken and told they had nowhere to go. Tank typed back, I'm on it. Give me her information. Within an hour, Tank had coordinated with the Phoenix Angels chapter. They'd pick up the woman and her kids tonight, move them to a shelter, start the process of building a new life. Over the next 3 months, the Hells Angels Domestic Violence Prevention Network helped 43 women escape abuse. Some went to shelters. Some relocated to other states. All of them found safety. Tank coordinated every case personally. He drove thousands of miles, made hundreds of calls, spent his own money when the resources ran short. The other club members stepped up too. Reaper became the legal liaison, working with lawyers and courts. Snake handled security, making sure abusers couldn't track down the women who'd escaped. Even Hammer got involved, using his connections to find jobs and housing for survivors. The program got attention. Local news did a story. Then national news. Suddenly, the Hells Angels weren't just a motorcycle club. They were heroes. Tank did 3 interviews, all of them awkward and uncomfortable. He didn't like talking about himself, didn't like the attention. But Patricia convinced him it was important. These stories need to be told, she said. Women need to know there's help available, and men need to see that real strength isn't about dominating others. It's about protecting them. One of those interviews led to Tank getting a call from a documentary filmmaker who wanted to tell Sarah's story. Tank called Sarah to ask permission. "Only if you're comfortable," Tank said. "I'll say no if you want." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "Will it help other women?" "Probably. Visibility matters. Stories matter." "Then yes, tell my story. Just leave out my new name. I'm still Sarah Collins in the story, but in real life, I'm someone else now. Someone free." The documentary took 6 months to make. They interviewed Tank, Sarah, Patricia Murphy, Detective Chen, even some of Rick's former friends who'd come forward with regrets about not stopping him sooner. The film premiered at a domestic violence awareness event. Tank didn't want to go, but Patricia insisted. "You started this," she said. "You should see what it's become." The theater was packed. Hundreds of people, survivors, advocates, law enforcement, regular citizens who cared. As the lights dimmed and the film started, Tank felt his heart pounding. The documentary opened with Sarah's voice over footage of Murphy's diner. "I was ready to die that night," Sarah said. "I'd accepted it. In my mind, I was already gone. And then a man I didn't know did something I never expected. He said yes." The film showed the confrontation in the parking lot using the security footage Murphy had saved. It showed Rick's escalation, his arrest, his bail, the chase to Montana. It showed Tank's fight with Rick in Maria's kitchen, though they'd edited out the worst of the violence. But more than anything, it showed the aftermath. Sarah working at the safe house, the Hell's Angels program helping other women, the ripple effect of one act of kindness on one rainy night. When the film ended, the theater was silent. Then someone started clapping. Then someone else. Within seconds, the entire audience was on their feet applauding. Tank sat frozen in his seat, overwhelmed. Patricia put her hand on his shoulder. "You did this," she whispered. "You made this possible." After the screening, people lined up to talk to Tank. Women who'd escaped abuse wanted to thank him. Men who'd been abusers wanted to apologize to make amends. Parents whose daughters had been killed by domestic violence wanted to tell their stories. Tank listened to all of them, shook every hand, gave every hug that was asked for, and by the end of the night he understood something fundamental. His mother's death hadn't been meaningless. It had led him here, to this moment, to this mission. She'd died so that Sarah could live, so that all these other women could live. Her sacrifice had created a chain of salvation that would continue long after Tank was gone. 3 weeks after the documentary premiered, Tank got a letter from the governor's office. He'd been nominated for the state's Citizen Hero Award for his work with domestic violence victims. Tank threw the letter away. He didn't do this for awards or recognition. He did it because it was right, because someone had to, because he could. But Hammer fished the letter out of the trash. "You're going to that ceremony," Hammer said, "and you're going to accept that award, not for you, for every woman who's been too scared to ask for help. You show them that help exists, that they're not alone." Tank went to the ceremony, wore a suit that Patricia made him buy, stood on stage while the governor talked about his heroism and sacrifice, accepted an award he didn't feel he deserved. In the audience sat 47 women he'd helped save. Sarah wasn't among them. She was in Montana, safe and anonymous, but her presence was felt. When Tank gave his acceptance speech, he kept it short. "I'm not a hero," he said. "I'm just someone who said yes when someone asked for help. The real heroes are the women who found the courage to ask, who decided that survival mattered more than fear, who chose life over death. Everything else is just details." He looked out at the audience, at all those faces marked by pain and resilience. If you're in danger, ask for help. If someone asks you for help, say yes. It's that simple and that complicated. We save each other or we don't survive. There's no third option. Tank stepped down from the stage to thunderous applause. But he barely heard it, because in the back of the auditorium, standing by the exit, was Sarah. She'd come. Despite the risk of being seen, despite the careful anonymity she'd built, she'd come. After the ceremony, Tank found her in the parking lot. "You came," he said. "I had to. Needed to see you accept what you've earned. Needed to tell you in person what you mean to me. Sarah, let me finish. I've been practicing this speech for 3 months, so just let me finish. Tank nodded. You saved my life, Sarah said. But more than that, you taught me that life was worth saving, that I was worth saving. For 5 years, Rick convinced me I was nothing, worthless, lucky that he even tolerated me, and I believed him, believed it so deeply that I forgot I was human. Tears ran down her face, but she kept going. You reminded me, not with words, but with actions, by risking your life for a stranger, by believing me when I said I was in danger, by standing between me and death without hesitation. You reminded me that I mattered, and once I remembered that I couldn't forget it again. You always mattered, Tank said softly. I know that now, but I didn't then, and I needed someone to show me, so thank you for being that someone, for being my angel when I needed one most. Sarah stepped forward and hugged Tank. He held her carefully, mindful of his own strength, remembering how fragile she'd been that first night. But Sarah wasn't fragile anymore. She was steel-wrapped in kindness. She'd taken her pain and forged it into purpose. What happens now? Tank asked when they pulled apart. Now I go back to Montana. Keep helping women. Keep telling my story. Keep proving that escape is possible. And me. You keep being you. Keep saving people who think they can't be saved. Keep showing the world that bikers can be heroes. Keep making your mother proud. Sarah kissed his cheek, then walked to her car. She paused before getting in. Tank, one more thing. Stop looking for redemption. You already have it. You've saved dozens of lives. Your mother would be so proud of who you became. Then she drove away, and Tank stood alone in the parking lot under the stars. He pulled out his phone and looked at the angel keychain photo Sarah had sent him months ago. She'd given him the physical keychain back, but she'd kept a photo. A reminder that they'd both survived. Tank's phone buzzed. New message from Patricia. Woman in Seattle needs help. Husband's a cop. She's terrified. Can you coordinate? Tank looked at the message. He was tired. The award ceremony had drained him. He wanted to go home and sleep. But there was a woman in Seattle who needed help. Tank typed back. Already on it. Send me the details. Because that's what Tank did now. That's who he was. Not a warrior fighting foreign enemies. Not a medic trying to save soldiers. Not a broken man drowning in guilt. He was someone who said yes when others said no. Someone who stood in the gap between victims and their abusers. Someone who turned pain into purpose. He was Tank Williams. Hell's Angel. Marine. Medic. And the man who proved that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply care. 5 years later, the Hell's Angels Domestic Violence Prevention Network had chapters in 17 states. They'd helped over 800 women escape abuse. 3 had been killed by their abusers before they could be saved, and Tank carried their names in his wallet. Reminded himself daily that perfect was impossible, but better was achievable. Sarah ran 4 safe houses in Montana, Oregon, and Washington. She'd remarried a good man who treated her with respect and kindness. She sent Tank a photo of her wedding day. She was smiling in a way that showed healing was real. Patricia retired from running St. Catherine's Shelter, but stayed active as an advisor to the Angels program. She and Tank had coffee every Tuesday morning, planning strategies and sharing stories. Murphy's Diner became a safe meeting place for women seeking help. Murphy trained his entire staff on recognizing signs of abuse and how to quietly offer resources. He hung a small sign by the register, "Need help, ask for the special." The staff knew what it meant. Detective Chen was promoted to lieutenant and started a domestic violence task force in the police department. She worked closely with the Angels Program building trust between law enforcement and survivors. Rick Collins was serving 23 years in Montana State Prison. He'd written Tank several letters over the years, some apologetic, some angry, some rambling and incoherent. Tank never responded. Some people didn't deserve redemption. They just deserved consequences. And Tank kept writing, kept answering calls, kept showing up when others said it was too dangerous, too complicated, too late. Because someone had tried to save his mother once. And even though it hadn't worked, even though she'd died anyway, that person had tried. Tank had promised himself he'd be that person for others. And he kept that promise every single day. On the 6th anniversary of the night he met Sarah, Tank rode his Harley to Murphy's diner. It was raining just like that first night. He parked in the same spot, walked to the same corner booth, ordered the same terrible coffee. And he thought about all the Sarahs he'd helped since then, all the women who'd asked for help and received it, all the lives that had been saved because one man said yes on one rainy night. Murphy brought over the coffee pot for a refill. "You okay?" Murphy asked. "You look contemplative." "Just thinking about how things change. 6 years ago I was just a biker drinking coffee. Now I'm part of something bigger." "You were always part of something bigger," Murphy said. "You just didn't know it yet." Tank's phone buzzed. New message from Patricia. 16-year-old girl in Texas. Abusive father. School counselor reached out. "Can we help?" Tank didn't hesitate. "We can help. We always help. Because that's what angels do. They show up in the darkness and remind people that light still exists. They stand between evil and innocence. They say yes when the world says no." Tank finished his coffee, left cash on the table, and walked out into the rain. His Harley waited loyal and ready. Beyond the parking lot, somewhere in the night, someone needed help. And Tank would be there. Today, tomorrow, every day he had left. Because once you save someone's life, you understand something fundamental. Every person matters, every life has value, and sometimes the difference between death and survival is simply someone caring enough to try. Tank started his engine, the roar cutting through the rain and darkness. He pulled out of the parking lot and headed toward Texas, toward a 16-year-old girl who needed an angel. And behind him, Murphy's diner glowed warm in the night, a beacon for anyone seeking shelter from the storm. The neon sign flickered once, twice, then steadied. A promise that help existed, that safety was possible, that escape was real. Sarah had been right all those years ago. Some angels wear black leather and ride Harleys. Some angels have scars and troubled pasts. Some angels are broken people who turned their pain into purpose. But they're angels nonetheless. Real, imperfect human angels who prove every single day that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's choosing to act despite it. Tank Williams had learned that lesson in Afghanistan, had carried it through his mother's death, had lived it the night he met Sarah Collins in a rain-soaked diner, and he would carry it for the rest of his life, one saved woman at a time, until the day he couldn't ride anymore. Because that's what heroes do. Not because they're perfect or fearless or special, but because when someone asks for help, they say yes. And that simple word, that single syllable of affirmation changes everything.